Okay. Oh, Carmen, thank you so much for getting the recording going. Um, Carmen, do you want to take it from here?
All right, yes, let's get started. Hey, everyone. I see we're joining from all over. To get us started, we're going to ground us in a little bit of what the Institute for Common Power does. And it's going to be through this video led by some of our leadership. So we hope you enjoy just this little bit.
Well, you have a responsibility, and we teach this in the Institute, that once you have that knowledge, you need to use it in some way to create change. It's one of the things that Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois said. He said, you can't just have the education. You have to be able to take that education and turn it into action. It's how we model what we do with education to action in the Institute. And so knowledge is resistance as long as you use it as resistance.
So we are here to talk about the Institute for Common Power.
Yes.
Is it relevant in 2025?
The assault that we are facing, not only on truth, but on people who are marginalized in this country, we need to have a space where we can teach people about the history of this country. We can historicize what is happening today so that we can empower them. One of the things that we've taken to saying lately is knowledge is resistance. Now, that is something that shouldn't be as true and as powerful as it is today. But one of the things that historically, for instance, a fascist regime has sought to do is to quell knowledge, is to knock out the intellectuals. Because if you can remove knowledge from people, you can control them. And so right now, if we can make sure that people are equipped with the correct history, if we can make sure that we are teaching them what the schools don't want them to learn right now, about slavery, about Jim Crow, about the dispossession of land for indigenous people, then we can empower them and catalyze them to do the work today to create a just and inclusive democracy.
All right, and with that, we're going to introduce ourselves as the facilitators of this amazing teach-in. I am Carmen Cruz. I have been teaching special education social studies for 14 years in New York City. Sounds crazy to say 14 years already. And I'll pass it over to my partners.
Hey everybody, Ivory Kennedy Jr., Columbus, Ohio. I'm a program manager for Columbus or for Ohio State, and serve as the third of the Educator for Democracy team. And I will pass it to Luke.
Yeah, thanks, team. Luke Mitchner, I'm a social studies teacher in Bellevue, Washington, just outside of Seattle, in my 20th year in the classroom, and also an educator ambassador with the Institute for Common Power. Thrilled to be with you tonight for sure, and with this incredible team, Carmen and Ivory. And we've got some fantastic presenters for you tonight as well. We're going to get to Jody Fernandez in just a couple of minutes, who's going to kick us off. But first, we're going to tell you just a little bit more about who we are. We've got a handful of folks joining us for the first time tonight, and we're thrilled to have you with us. The Institute for Common Power is the educational branch of Common Power. Common Power is a voting rights and voting justice organization, and the Institute is the nonprofit education arm. We teach folks about civil rights and voting rights history with an eye on education to action, as our director, Dr. Terry Scott, said in that video that you watched to kick things off tonight. I put the link to that in the chat too, if you want to watch more of that interview between Charles Douglas, who's the executive director of Common Power, and Dr. Terry Ann Scott, who is right now on a learning tour. She's in Birmingham, Alabama today with 40 folks or so, teaching them in person about the civil rights and voting rights journey of the United States. And all five of the educators with us tonight have been on that journey. And we're excited to have them with us to share this evening. Here's some of what the other things that we do in the Institute. I think these numbers need to be revised. They're all too low. We've taken far more participants than this at this point. With apologies, this is a copy and paste job from last time we did this, and I need to update the numbers. That's on me. But one of the primary things we do in the Institute is take folks to the South to learn this history in person so that they can feel catalyzed to change, to do things in their own spaces when they come back. And here we are. We're doing some of that work tonight.
And this is the educator map that also needs to be updated to reflect most of more of the people who have gone on. So any of the educator ambassadors that have gone on the tour have the opportunity to be featured in our educator Institute ambassador map. So you can see the flow of what the reach that we do, that we have, as well as where a lot of us are coming from. As you can see, we are heavily populated across the United States. So again, how can we take and channel a lot of what it is that we have learned, that we hope that you learn today, and then catalyze more of a movement to again do what Dr. Scott said, and catalyze people for movement towards a more just and inclusive democracy.
And that reach doesn't end with the tours, as Ivory was talking about. We also have a lot of education that happens. That's what we are doing today. And we have a couple of more sessions before we close 2025. The first one is being led by our amazing Ivory Kennedy Jr. in January. He has 3 sessions in which he's talking about patriotism and reclaiming patriotism. If you haven't heard Ivory speak, you have, like, I ask you to click on that link right now and sign up. Even if you can't make it on those dates, it will be recorded and emailed out to you. If you listen to the way Ivory talks about this country, you feel that little bit of hope in your heart. And I think we all need that right now. Our other session is on December 16th, and this is kind of where we're closing out 2025. The leaders, our leadership within Common Power, the directors will be leading this session in which we ask the community to come together one last time in 2025 as we launch our curriculum for 2026. So we hope you join us there as well.
All right. Well, we've all come together for tonight, this incredible program of educators from across the country, our Educators for Democracy quarterly teach-in featuring 5 educator ambassadors. These are folks who have traveled with the Institute and have taken that knowledge back to their classrooms, back to their communities. They've brought so much to the Institute. It's this relationship that works really beautifully both ways. And so tonight we'll hear from these 5 wonderful folks. And I'm going to send it over to Ivory to introduce Ms. Jody Fernandez to kick us off.
Yes. Give me 1 second. All right, so our first presentation is going to be from Ms. Jody Fernandez. Jody is an experienced educator, equity coach, and consultant with over 18 years of progressive experience, distinguished by her expertise in culturally relevant responsive teaching, anti-racist strategies, and curriculum innovations. She holds an MA in English and an MS in education, and her completed doctoral coursework at Northwestern University focused on the social and cultural analysis of the education system. Jody is a hip hop aficionado who has created and accredited 2 courses. One, the Introduction to Hip Hop Studies and Introduction to African and African American History through the State University of New York at Albany. She is also the author of the memoirs Elevator, A Bronx Girl's Tale, and Ordered Steps, An Unorthodox Educator's Ascension Story. Jody lives in the Hudson Valley, New York, with her husband and daughter. I had the privilege of being on an educator learning tour with Jody, and I'm very excited to hand things over to you for you to do your thing. So without further ado, Jody from the Bronx.
Hello, everyone. Good evening here in New York. I apologize in advance for any computer issues. It's not my fault. Okay. So here we see a man ascending. Oh, see, that was too quick. An escalator. And you can imagine, how difficult and arduous that is, right? To walk, in an upwards manner, and you're supposed to be going down. And that's a metaphor for anti-racism. Anti-racism is radical. It is active in its oppositional work, but it is important work, and it's what's required if we are going to dismantle systemic racism. So my teaching or lecture, or really I want to call it a conversation, is about anti-racist pedagogy and how it is a tool for liberation. Slide looks stuck. That's okay. Okay, so this is me. This photo is in the stairwell of the housing projects that I grew up in. I grew up in Edenwald Projects, which is in New York City. And when I took this picture at 18 years old, I had no idea that I was going to become a teacher, let alone a liberationist. But what I did know was what it felt like to feel invisible and powerless. And as I took in the world around me, I thought about it very critically. I've always been a very cerebral person. And I looked at where I lived at and I was like, this ain't it. And I knew I was going to get out, but I wasn't really sure how. So what I did was I chose to use my brain and not my body to forge a path outside of the projects and to a life that I felt comfortable with. So what I did, when I think about it in terms of academic jargon, is I participated in my own liberation, because liberation is a praxis. And here I have the quote that Paulo Freire said, that it's the action and reflection of men and women upon their world in order to transform it. So this is me last year, and I'll tell you about my story. So I pursued an undergraduate degree in mass communications. My goal was always to become a newscaster. And while in undergrad, I read an amazing text called Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and it changed my life. It made me understand that all people were supposed to be liberated. So after I graduated with my bachelor's degree in mass communications, I landed a job at the Food Network. And while it wasn't, Channel 12 news, I suppose that I would meet enough people and make enough connections that I could some way get myself to the Castle Hill area where News 12's headquarters is. But that didn't happen. I was very bored. I was unfulfilled. And so I went back to school and earned an MA in English. Became an adjunct instructor, and I felt like I had less money than I had before. It did not pay. So I went back to school. I pursued an MA in education, and I became a high school teacher. And I had already had the work of Freire in my soul, and I became committed to liberationist pedagogy. And then fast forward to 2019, I read an amazing text called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And while my fire was already lit, it fanned those flames. I was on fire. And then the pandemic hit. So what I did was I leaned further into truth telling and teaching. And I got in a lot of trouble. And I won't go into what happened to me, but it was good trouble. And after 17 years at that point of teaching, I received the Educator of Excellence Award. Hence, liberation is a praxis, as distinguished from theory. It is what we do to change the trajectory of our lives, to liberate ourselves from the oppression that we're born into. So this is a fascism checklist. It says a strong sense of nationalism, patriotism, revolving around the defeat of a common threat or cause. Human rights are unworthy of consideration or respect. I don't know if this sounds familiar to you, but it does to me. Government control by mass media, glorification and ascendancy of the military, etc. So I just like you to think about the time that we're living in. Went too fast. Got to go back. So for me, this teaching is really a call to action, because I believe that our democracy is quickly being eroded, and I am scared to death. But I know that the solution is education. And I'm not talking about the dated banking method of education that, once again, Freire talks about in Pedagogy of the Oppressed, where teachers make this deposit into students and they're looking for, they're looking to get something out. But it's about anti-racist education for liberation. And it's so important because an educated class is really a direct threat to fascism. So why anti-racism, you ask? Well, because America is racist. And I had a video here that I was going to play showcasing our president in all his vainglory, but I'm going to skip that. And I'll just let you settle on this meme here, where my girl letting us know that we live in a racist country. So definitions are important. If you've read Kendi's work, he is big on definitions. It centers us. It makes us understand exactly what the issue is and how to fight it. So racism is, of course, any policy or idea, something that we think about that suggests that there is a racial hierarchy, that there are people that are inherently better or worse than others just by how they look and where that places them on the racial hierarchy that we've been given. And then anti-racism is the active effort through policy and action to produce and sustain racial equity. The most important word there is active. Pedagogy. Pedagogy is the method or practice of teaching and learning. So it's not just giving information, it's also learning from your students, learning from the world around you. And then pedagogy for liberation is teaching and learning for the purpose of dismantling systems of oppression by empowering our learners, whether they're our students or just the people around us, to question, critique, and change the world. That is liberation. My goat here, Paulo Freire, if you say it like that, or Freire. And he says, when education is not liberating, the dream of the oppressed is to become the oppressors. And that's why liberation is so important in education, because if we don't center it, we'll have people who their goal is to become the very oppressor that, they hate it. Anti-racist pedagogy is one of the most powerful tools we can use to eradicate oppression. And an educator not committed to anti-racism is not committed to liberation. And that's a problem. So anti-racist pedagogy was developed from and is rooted in the fields of critical race theory, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, and the broader social justice movement, with significant contributions from scholars like Kendi and Kishimoto. The concept also builds on earlier works, such as Freire's critical pedagogy, which I have the image for here, and the historical tradition of fugitive pedagogy, which highlights the work of educators of color who used education to resist oppression. And that is Common Power's work, right? When, all of the, the lectures that I attended with Dr. Scott was all about, these people who used education in different forms. They were teachers themselves, but they were also foot soldiers, right? And teaching about the oppression for the purpose of liberation. Anti-racist pedagogy is a paradigm located within a critical theory utilized to explain and counteract the persistence and impact of racism using, again, that word praxis or practice as its focus to promote social justice for the creation of a democratic society in every respect. And that comes from Alda Blackeney's work. It requires the following 9 actions from educators. And my conversation tonight is going to be really steeped in how my pedagogy is showcased in my students. So the first of these action steps is examining the historical roots and contemporary manifestations of racial prejudice and discrimination. Here we have, with his consent, one of my amazing seniors, Aiden.
White guys that really just didn't understand what beauty and human nature is. It's in plain and simple. They didn't like how Black people looked, or how Asian people looked, or how anybody looked that wasn't white. So they try to make a hierarchy to put their people in front of everybody else. And guess who they put at the bottom? Us. So we fight and we be better than what anybody tells us to be.
And that's a word, Aiden. Okay, so the 3 white guys that he's talking about, as we study the creation of race and the creation of the racial hierarchy that most of y'all, not me, adhere to, Blumenbach, Linnaeus, and Zurara. And we had just finished learning about that mostly through Jablonski's work, the creation of race. I do apologize for how slowly these slides are turning. Again, not my fault.
I was going to say, Jody, maybe try to refresh the slides and see if that'll repopulate it for you.
Okay. I didn't share sound, so I have to do it one more time.
Your mentioning of Zurara, we talked about that when I taught 8th grade. So I'm following you. I'm following you.
Oh, nice. The second action step is exploring the influence I am not this patient by nature, but I'm trying. All right, the exploring the influence of race and culture on one's own personal and professional attitudes and behavior. So this is just an example of one of our reflection questions from Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist that my students are reading. And this is just number 10. And just to give you, I was going to show some of the responses, but I know I only have 30 minutes. But the question is, to be an anti-racist is to challenge these ideas, essentializing race and racial identity. To be an anti-racist is to focus on ending the racism that shapes the mirages, not ignoring the mirages that shape people's lives. And then I asked them to identify one way in which you essentialize race and or racial identity. And the answers that I got were amazing. You know, just from, I can give you one example of a student who is Hispanic and said that anytime that they saw a white student in the room, they expected them to be the smartest. And that was just heartbreaking, but it's true. And that is the effect that racism and the racial hierarchy has on them. And also for my suggestion for, adults or educators who need to do this exploration work or this exploratory work, they should take, if you haven't already, Harvard's implicit association test. I can give a link if anybody's interested. Number 3 is identifying appropriate anti-racist resources to incorporate into the curriculum in different subject areas. These are some of the texts that I teach. In my Intro to African American History course, we do white fragility, homegoing, how to be an anti-racist. And I think it's important to start with how to be an anti-racist because he really goes into, Dr. Kendi really goes into the creation of race, where it comes from, how it's not real, but how its implications and impacts are very real. And this is my own text that has made its way in a curriculum. I did not ask for that to happen, but I am thrilled. So this is a YA, it's become one of our required readings or, curricular text for 11th graders. The kids love it. We also do Junot Diaz's Drown, which is just a seminal text on race amongst Dominican Americans, which is not talked about nearly enough. And of course, good old D'Angelo's White Fragility, and the kids really love it. Okay, that was gonna have to come out again. I do apologize. You just bear with me. What I did was click on one of the links in my slideshow, so now the slideshow is not coming. Okay. Am I still sharing the slide? No, right?
No, nothing on the screen. Here we go. Yep. You are back on.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It just went, as soon as whatever you did, it exited out again.
I have to click share sound and okay. Number 4 is developing new approaches to teaching using varying cognitive approaches to diverse learning styles. So one of the things we do as sort of like an end of the unit demonstration of their learning is they create podcasts, and they can do them live, or they can they could do them live, or they can record them. They can do just audio, or they can have the visual element. And this is just some students, and they'll probably just play a little bit of it. I'm so proud of them. And if you see the fire, that comes from the Fireside Chats, if anyone knows that reference.
That it has worked because we have so many issues today because of people's race when it shouldn't really be that way. And as I mentioned in 18 times.
Were you able to hear any of that? Okay, thank you, Jennifer. I'm going to come out of that. Number 5 is identifying and counteracting bias and stereotyping in learning material.
Like this is getting observed, and you can't.
So this is a student, her name is Heaven. Again, I have her consent. And she is talking about how she experienced stereotyping from the head of the STEAM department, which is science, technology, English, arts, and mathematics. And just listen to her story.
Spoke to our table while we were doing work, and we were all doing work in like all like contributing, but Lucia was the only one who's writing on the board, and she's the only white person at our like entire table. So that was on a Friday. We come back on Monday and we asked Miss Sa how the observation went, and she was like, "Oh, he said that everybody should try to be like Lucia, and if we can get everybody in this class to be like Lucia, then you'll have like an amazing class." And I was like,
Terrible. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm not going to play the second part, but I want to share Heidi's experience with stereotyping.
It's a racial policy that was held by white people because you just had to do it and then justify it by saying and creating more stereotypes on Latin people that they're criminals, rapists, and drug addicts, and that they're making the world a worse place. That way, it justifies his racist policy going against them because there's too many.
Yeah. And how did who created the chart, the racial hierarchy? What was his name? Zarara, right? Gomez de Llanos de Zarara, right? How did he help Trump out how many centuries later? How did his creation, right? Remember, there were 4 levels, right? How did that allow Trump and other racists to get, like Hitler, to be able to do the things that they did? Because they started with an idea. Go ahead. Oh, can you be on camera?
Number 6 is dealing with racial tensions and conflicts. Again, these are all the action steps to being an anti-racist educator.
In part of our class, for having my head down for like 2 seconds, but I was doing my work. Like sometimes when I'm like doing work, I'll have my head down, but it'll look like I'm asleep sometimes. But while that was happening, in one of my classmates back then, Dylan, him and his friend Eli were literally talking the entire time, and the teacher didn't say a word to them.
What races are they?
White.
Well, okay.
From the mountains of Caucasus.
Okay.
So one time I got in part of our class for having my head down for like.
Number 7 is identifying appropriate assessment and placement procedures and practices. So this video is just, it's a video that accompanies my students when they are applying for different like dual enrollment classes that they feel that they would be interested in. So my African diaspora or intro to African American history, unfortunately, is an elective. It should just be a mandatory course. So, but what does happen is that these students, they're able to earn college credit for the course, which we know is going to save them money. But it's just about, making these types of courses available and attractive to students so that they can see themselves in the curriculum. And just being very creative with it. I'll play a little bit of it. So when a student is thinking about what kind of courses they want to take in 11th and 12th grade, I send this to my colleagues so that they can play it for their classes, so that the students could know what they're looking for. Edit there. Number 9 is assessing the hidden curriculum and making it more inclusive and reflective of all students' experiences.
The best way to teach anti-racism and to express it is to just slip it in normal conversation. A lot of people do not like being lectured or being told stuff, and it's stupid, and it's this attitude we built up. But if you yourself start using it in conversation, you can easily influence other people to do the same. When it comes, especially when it comes to using anti-racist language, like example, like in Kenny uses in the book, he talks about using the difference between using the word enslavement and the enslaved and slaves. Like that's something that if you want people to start using that kind of language, the best way is to use it yourself. Because if people hear you saying it, then they'll start to say it.
I know my students are amazing.
That's the best way to teach it.
All right, number 9. I know that I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to read number 9. Again, I do apologize for how slowly everything is moving. Number 9 is ensuring the personnel policies and practices are consistent with equality goals and that they provide managers with the knowledge and skills to implement equality programs. And this video that I have is just about one of my lovely students talking about how it's important to have teachers that look like you.
Black teachers in school, especially if it's like this one time, it introduced them to like, because they have it as like a normal way of teaching where like if they see a white teacher because it's deemed as, are you getting a better education?
All right, so I just wanted to give you the gist of that, and I will wrap up. Racism is etched into every aspect of our educational system. We see it in the bigotry of low expectations, zero tolerance policies, limited access to AP courses, biased standardized testing, over-policing and disproportionate discipline, non-white teacher underrepresentation, all of which feed the school to prison pipeline, which anti-racist teaching and learning is the key. And that is it. I will skip this slide. This was a call to action. Will you answer the call?
All right. Thank you, Jody. Question for you in terms of what it is that you do. What would you say, or what is your biggest tip for the educators on the line, or just people in general that might not be educators, as it relates to having conversations about being anti-racist? And what have you seen from your students in the conversations? You gave us a little bit of a snippet of what it's like in your classroom, but both, what would you say how we get there in terms of the anti-racist education, and what would you say has been the highlight of what your students are able to get out of this experience?
Well, I'm going to quote my student Kenny, and you start to slip it in conversation. You can't be heavy-handed or didactic with it. You know, we have to be anti-racist. You model it by the way that you teach. When you hear someone make a statement that's steeped in racism, as, you know, I mean, I've been told, oh, I'm sure you can dance. Things like that, you push back with anti-racism. And I see that, you know, and I'm talking about outside of my elective courses and my regular ed courses, my regular English or humanities courses, I'm slipping it in here and there. So when I heard him say that, I was like, yeah, that's what it is. I can be more specific in, you know, my elective courses, because that's really the gist of it. So that's really one tactic that seems to work. You know, another big one is that, you know, listen, you can say all the curses you want, but you cannot say the N-word, that kind of thing. And they're like, oh, why can't we say the N-word? And then I teach into that. So I hope I answered your question.
No, absolutely. And I appreciate that. I think the student perspective is not something that we get to like see on camera a lot, but I appreciate that. And I mean, great presentation. I think that is a good way to set the tone for the evening. So we appreciate you. I'll pass it to Carmen if you have any follow-up questions or ready to transition.
What I would just love to tell everyone listening in is please give Jody her flowers in the chat so she can see how amazing this was. And I will introduce our next speaker. Alicia, as I introduce you, you can feel free to put up your slides. Alicia Trujillo is a multilingual educator with 24 years of experience, currently teaching at Pueblo City Schools in Pueblo, Colorado. She holds a master's in linguistically diverse education and a bachelor's in elementary education, liberal arts from Adams State University. Alicia spent 11 years as a classroom teacher in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grades before specializing in multilingual learners in grades K through 8 for the past 13 years. Passionate about history, she uses nonfiction books to introduce students to historical figures and global events. Alicia has participated in programs such as the White House History Teacher Institute and the Common Power Learning Tour to enhance her knowledge of U.S. history and civil rights. Outside the classroom, she is a Disney enthusiast and carries her goofy stuffed animal on her travels, embodying her belief in the power of fun and learning. Without further ado, Alicia.
Hello, having some issues, computer issues already to share, sorry. Why aren't you going this way?
This is an option. If you'd like to send slides my way, I can share from here
Okay.
too.
Let me see if I could get it to you, Luke.
Well, we're working through this. Jody, I'm wondering if you're still there.
I am,
Can I ask you one more question?
of course.
You mentioned you've gotten in some trouble. I'm wondering about some of the pushback you've gotten and how you've responded to that.
Well, the biggest trouble I gotten in, I had a student who was spewing hate, and I told him that that was unacceptable, and he was secretly recording me, and he posted it to YouTube. He was basically telling me that unarmed black men were not killed at a high rate. This was in 2017. I got death threats. I write about it in my second book. I had people wanting to kill me. I got 1 million views. And what I did is I stood 10 toes. You know, I just, my district didn't support me. They said that her views, Ms. Fernandez's views, are not consistent with ours. And I'm like, okay, so what views are? And what happened was, fast forward, 3.5 years later, George Floyd is publicly lynched. And then that became sexy, if you know what I mean. To be, to talk about black men, it became everybody's talking point. And at one point, I was called the Colin Kaepernick of the school, as if that was supposed to make me feel better. You know what I mean? So it's a lonely place. I was a social pariah, but I always knew what I was doing was the right thing to do, And this boy, I guess he knew my politics, I guess, as they said, and, he's secretly recording. I had no idea. So, those of us who do have tenure, I would say we should use it for good. Because had I been an untenured teacher, I would have been fired. For sure. For simply telling the truth, I think that we should I think that we should handle the brunt of it so that the younger, newer teachers, can keep their paychecks so that when they get tenure, they can follow in our footsteps.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for sharing that. I do have Alicia's slides ready, so I'm going to pop those up too. But I also want to bridge between Jody and Alicia. I think it's really beautiful that we're going from high school talking about anti-racism in the classroom to banned picture books now. And the relationship between that, I think, is really beautiful. So I'm excited to see what we hear next from Alicia. And we've got your slides ready to roll. Let me get them up here.
Thank you, Luke.
Yep, no problem. And just kind of cue me through, all right?
Okay, so you could go through this one. As Carmen said, you could go through the next one. I'm a multilingual ESL, CLDE, whatever the different terminology you may know. Have been doing that for a while. So in 2025, book censorship in the United States is rampant and common. Never before in the life of living Americans have so many books been systematically removed from school libraries across the country. Never before have so many states passed laws or regulations to facilitate the banning of books, including bans on books statewide. Many politicians have bullied school leaders to censor books according to their ideological preferences, even threatening public funding to schools to meet their demands. So next slide. So what is a book ban? Let's talk about ways you could censor a book. So here are common reasons for book bans. Age appropriateness, the content is considered unsuitable for the intended age. Race and racism, content that deals with racial issues or is perceived as promoting racism. LGBTQ plus, the presence or theme of anything LGBTQ plus has been banned in many books and states. Offensive language, use of profanity or other language deemed offensive. Sexual content, obligations to sexually explicit material, political or religious viewpoints, books that are seen as politically motivated or religiously charged. So let's look at some definitions. What's the banned book? A banned book is a book that has been removed from a library or school's collection in response to an objection. This could be objection by one parent or a group of parents. A challenge book is an attempt to remove or restrict access to a book based on a complaint or objection, even if the book remains on the shelf. So a parent or group may challenge the book, but a school board may deem that that challenge does not, they don't feel the book needs to be banned, so it stays on the book shelves, stays in school shelves. And censorship is the limiting or removing of access to words, images, or ideas. Another type is a shadow ban, which is the silent removal or a restriction of them via movement of books from public shelves to behind the desks without public or government prompting. So I read about this book had been banned in Florida, so then another state just quietly pulled it off the shelf without having any consent or communication with parents or other stakeholders. Intellectual freedom is the right for every individual to both seek and receive information from all points of view without restriction, which as Americans is one of our rights. We have the right to choose what we want to read. And a unique title is the number of individual distinct books targeted for censorship, not the total number of times books were challenged in different locations. And that will come up in some upcoming slides, that the unique title is an individual book. Next slide, please. So what's a picture book? Picture books are considered to be children's book where illustrations are crucial as the text. It often tells a story visually, sometimes even with few or no words. There could just be pictures in the whole book with no words whatsoever, where a student would tell you what they think is going on just based off the pictures. Typically, they're 32 pages, 32 to 40 pages to build a story for young readers. They're primarily aimed at young children, preschool to early elementary. I've used them in my upper grades and in my middle school classes, and feel they're beneficial for high school, college as well too. Normally they're double page because it allows illustrations to be bigger. And there's also wordless books, which are stories just told through the pictures. And they have concept, biographies, and stories with rich language, rhythm, and themes in them. Next slide, please. So let's look at some data. Let's look at the amount of books that have been banned or challenged so far. So this is the most recent information I could find was from 2024. So these are titles that were challenged in public schools and libraries during 2024. 821 books were attempted to be censored. 5,813 total titles were challenged. That means that they didn't ultimately become banned, but that many books were challenged. 2,452 were unique titles. Again, unique title is each single book. So 2,452 books, separate single books were challenged. And the most challenged book was All Boys Aren't Blue. This was sourced from the American Library Association from 2024. And also in the 23-24 school year, they have banned some picture books that we just talked about. So in 23 and 24, PEN America counted more than 10,000 book bans in the school year, with 4,000 unique titles, with about 45% of the bans occurring in the state of Florida and 36% in Iowa. Most bans targeted young adult or adult titles, but about 2% of those books banned were picture books for the youngest readers. The heartwarming penguin adoption story, And Tango Makes Three, was the most frequently banned picture book of the 2023 to 2024 school year, followed by The Family Book, a colorful board book about different types of families. And Julian is a Mermaid is about a boy who uses a curtain as a mermaid tail. Next slide, please. So when a book makes the most ban list, it's not actually because it's dangerous. It's actually because it's powerful. So I got this quote from Maya, who does a wonderful newsletter email. She's on Substack called My Storybook. Anything that pops up about what the new administration has passed or banned or different holidays, this My Storybook, she has a great list of books that I highly recommend you follow to read her. Next slide, please. So let's look at these banned picture books. Are you ready to see what's been banned and why? Let's go through them. Here's the first book, And Tango Makes Three. It's a true story of two male penguins at the Central Park Zoo who adopt a baby penguin. This is true. It did happen at the Central Park Zoo, where it was two male penguins who incubated an egg and raised it. And it has been banned or challenged because it is considered to have a homosexual theme that's unsuitable for young families, and it has been viewed as an attack on families. Next slide. Here's a picture of Tango when Tango hatched after her two dads had sat on her egg the whole day and they became a family. Next slide. The Family Book so far has 5 bans, and it is celebrated for all kinds of families, big, small, messy, clean, with 2 moms or 2 dads. This book has been banned because of diverse family structures, inappropriate for elementary students, and it says it has promoted a homosexual agenda. Next slide. Julian is a Mermaid is about a young boy inspired by the Coney Island parade to create his own mermaid costume. He uses a curtain and a fern to create his own mermaid costume. His grandma initially disapproves of this outfit, but then brings him pearls to add to his costume. It has been banned or challenged because it is perceived to have some LGBTQ plus themes. Next slide shows a picture of Julian when his grandma finally decides she's okay with what he's doing. He's just playing around, and she gives him her own beads for him to wear to complete his costume. Next slide. Dreamers by Yuri Morales tells the story of her immigration from Mexico to the United States and her infant son in 1994. Even though she carried much with her, even though she left much behind, she carries her hope and her story with her family. Her hope, her strength, her stories, and her dreams. This has won the American Library Association's Pura-Balbi Award for its portrayal of immigrant experiences. It has been banned or considered controversial because of its book's themes of immigration, culture, identity, and family. Next slide. The Day You Begin follows several children who feel like outsiders for various reasons, such as their name, where they came from, or what they eat. It encourages children to share their stories to discover what they find out in common. Seems like that would be a good book you'd want kids to talk about, but it has been banned due to its deception due to its depiction of race, racism, and diversity in having characters of color. Next slide, please. Separate is Never Equal by Duncan Tunayth is about Sylvia Mendez and her brothers attending school in Westminster, California. They couldn't understand why Mexican-American children were forced to attend a separate school. Sylvia and her family became part of a landmark lawsuit that ended school segregation in California in 1947, 7 years before Brown v. Board of Education. It is banned due to quotes from white segregationists that made students feel uncomfortable. Not Hispanic students, but discomfort or guilt from white students is why this book has been banned. Next slide. Harold and the Purple Crayon by Crockett Johnson is an oldie but goodie. It was published in 1955, and it tells the story of Harold and his use of purple crayon to draw his way through a series of imaginative adventures. He creates his own world. He draws a moon. He draws a boat. He draws things to eat. The book is celebrated for its simple yet profound message about the power of imagination and creativity. Harold has been banned because it encourages vandalism and destruction of property. And they also believe the author was a communist. So let's look at these illustrations that cause vandalism. If you go to the next slide, here are the pictures that they have been banned for vandalism. Harold drawing his building in New York, Harold drawing and dragging underneath an apple tree, and drawing his sailboat as he moved away. Promotes violence and vandalism. Next slide. Another crayon book that's caused some controversy is The Day the Crayons Quit. It's about a boy named Duncan who finds a stack of letters from his crayons when he opens up his crayon box at school. The crayons have quit because they're unhappy with how they have been used, and they each use their letter to express their unique complaints. For example, orange and yellow fight over who gets to be the sun. The story follows Duncan as he tries to figure out how to make his crayons happy. While the Katy Independent School District in Texas was banned this book because the peach crayon is shown without its wrapper, which was deemed inappropriate and naked by some. So let's see this naked crayon and how offensive it is. If you go to the next slide, there's the peach naked crayon. Yes, in his letter to Duncan, he does say he does feel naked. You can just see the top of his head. Nothing else with the crayon, but this is why this book was banned. Next slide, please. Another crayon that has been caused up some controversy is the book Red by Michael Hall. Red's about a crayon labeled Red who struggles to be something he's not, till his friends help him see his new color. So if you look at this picture, you will see there is Red. He's got his red wrapper, but at the tip of the crayon, he is blue. So he inspires children to follow their own path and be true to their inner selves. He has been banned in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools for promoting transgender themes and gender identity issues. So if you turn the next slide, it shows some things Red cannot do. Red is asked to draw some strawberries, but he can't. He draws blueberries. And the other crayons wonder if he's really red at all. He's got red on his label. Of course he's red, and he came that way from the factory, so he has to be red. Red finally figures out he's not red, he's blue. He can draw a bluebird, he could draw blue jeans, he could draw a blue whale and blueberries. And he ends up being happy that he is blue and not red. Next slide, please. Baseball Saved Us by Ken Mokuzuki tells the true story of Shorty and his family. Shorty was a Japanese American forced into an internment camp during World War II. Facing harsh conditions in the desert, Shorty's dad decides to build a baseball field, creating a league that brings hope, dignity, and self-respect to the community despite the barbed wire fences and guards. This book has been banned because it includes a racial slur that's from the time period that happened then. And some also feel the deception of Japanese internment during World War II and the racism involved is too sensitive or controversial for young readers. Next slide. Hair Love by Matthew Cherry is about a Black father styling his daughter Zuri's natural hair for a special occasion. The book is a celebration of self-confidence, the bond between a father and daughter, and the beauty of natural Black hair. Also, it's the basis for an award-winning animated short of the same name, which if I have a link there to YouTube if you want to see it. It's about 6 minutes and it's a great little video. It was banned due to focusing on Black hair and culture and debates on diverse family structure because the dad was styling the hair, not the mom. Next slide, please. Peanut Goes for the Gold by Jonathan Van Nys follows Peanut, a non-binary guinea pig who lives with flair and confidence. He plays basketball, does gymnastics routine, and Peanut does everything their own special way. It encourages readers to love the South as they are, and it was challenged in Florida but unsuccessfully, so he is still on the shelves. Next slide, please. Something Happened in Our Town by Maureen Solano and by Marietta Collins tells the story about a Black man who was shot by the police. Two families, one white and one Black, have honest conversations to help their children understand what happened. Racial injustice is recognized and the children learn ways to stand up against it. This was banned because of divisive language and anti-police views, but I did use this book after the George Floyd incident, and it did help my kids be able to talk and express their feelings about what was going on. So it's a good story to read with children of all ages. Next slide, please. The Name Jar tells the story of Yoon Hae. Yoon Hae moves from Korea to the United States and worries that her classmates won't be able to say her name. To fit in, she decides to pick an American name from a jar, but none feel right to her. With the new friend, Yoon Hae discovers that the most special name is her own. A Northampton, Pennsylvania school district complained the book was based on a Marxist critical race theory and it was divisive and socialist, so was banned for that. Next slide. Sparkle Boy by Leslie Newman tells about Casey and his love of anything that sparkles. Shimmery skirts, glittery nails, shiny bracelets. His big sister isn't so sure boys should wear glitter, but he still does. Challenges of this book protested that the book has sensitive material topics, including gender identity and sexuality. Next slide. Harry Gets Carried Away tells the story of Harriet, who loves to dress up for every occasion. One day, she puts on her penguin costume to run errands, and an unexpected adventure begins. She finds herself in an unfamiliar place. Can she find her way back to her dad's? Banned or challenged because of the book's content, specifically the inclusion of two dads, the theme of self-expression, which some people view as inappropriate for children. Next slide. Sofia Valdez, Future Prez by Andrea Beatty features young Sofia turn into action after frustration when her abuelo is injured at a local landfill. She learns the dump is in danger to her community and takes a big idea to transform it to a park all the way to City Hall. Great idea, Sophia, but the book has not been banned for her themes. The book was banned due to illustrations. LGBTQ plus pride fern, a transgender trade pin, and a character who has both a beard and nail polish. So if you click on the next slide, here we could see those offensive pictures. That's why it's got banned. So again, you can see the man on his hat. He has the LGBTQ plus pin. On her backpack, she has the pride flag as a pin on there. And in the third picture there, there's a guy with the beard and he has nail polish on his nails. Not the theme of the story was banned, but just because of the illustrations. Next slide. Not My Idea by Anastasia Higginbotham invites white children and parents to become curious about racism, accept that it's real, and cultivate justice. This has been banned or challenged because some people find it inappropriate and racist, believe that it teaches children that whiteness is evil and promotes collective guilt. Next slide, please. A Place Inside of Me by Zetta Elliott is a poem in verse that explores the emotions of a young Black boy after a police shooting in his community, covering themes of grief, anger, pride, and hope. It was praised for its accessible approach to difficult topics like police brutality and Black Lives Matter movement. It also has, as you can see on it, won a Caldecott Award, or was a Caldecott nominee book. Caldecott Awards are given to picture books, kind of like the Newbery for chapter books. It's been challenged due to its content, a Black child's experience in the aftermath of a police shooting, and not age appropriate for elementary students. Next slide. When Aiden Became a Brother by Kyle Lukoff follows Aiden, a trans boy who wants to make sure his new siblings feel welcome and accepted from the start. He learns that leading with love matters the most. This book has been banned because it features a trans boy and has an LGBTQ plus theme. It also has won a Stonewall Book Award that is done for books that have a positive interpretation of an LGBTQ plus theme. Next slide, please. Swolvie by Academy Award actress Lupita Nyong'o is about a young girl who learns to love her dark skin. The story addresses colorism and self-esteem inspired by Nyong'o's own experiences and teaches that true beauty comes from within. This book has been banned or pulled from shelves in Florida and Pennsylvania because of its themes. Colorism and self-love are considered to be part of a woke agenda. She also has been given a Coretta Scott King Award for this book as well. Next slide. This Day in June by Gail Pittman invites readers to join a Pride celebration, honoring the LGBTQ plus community with colorful illustrations, uplifting rhymes, and resources for discussing inclusion and identity with children. The book has been banned because it features a Pride celebration with facts about LGBTQ plus history and culture. Next slide. Draw Me a Star by Eric Carlisle tells about a young artist who brings the world to life through drawings. A magical journey across the night sky with the star he created guides the whole story. This book has been banned because it features an image of Adam and Eve-like couple without clothes. So if you go to the next slide, here's a picture of why the story has been banned. That there are the Adam and the Eve-like characters without their clothes. Next slide. Morris McWhite and the Tangerine Dress by Christine Baldinicio is a gentleman story about Morris. Morris is the boy who loves wearing a tangerine dress and using his boundless imagination. When classmates tell him dresses are only for girls, Morris finds comfort at home, dreams up a dazzling space adventure, and returns to school ready to share his creativity proudly with others. This has been banned because it features a boy who likes to wear a dress and has LGBTQ plus themes. Next slide. Prince and Knight by David Hack is a modern fairy tale about a prince and a knight who join forces to defeat a dragon. In the process, the prince discovers the true love and partnership that he has been searching for all along. This book was banned because it features two men in love and has LGBTQ plus themes. Next slide. A's for Activists is an ABC board book designated for families who want to raise children passionate about activism and social justice. Vibrant illustrations, playful themes with alliteration. It introduces topics like environmental justice, civil rights, LGBTQ plus rights in a way that's fun for kids and meaningful for parents. This book has been banned because it explores social justice themes and includes LGBTQ plus content. Milo Imagines the World by Matt De La Pena takes place during a subway ride as Milo passes the time imagining the lives of his fellow passengers. But when one boy he's imagined steps at the same stop he does, they head to the same destination. Milo learns an important truth. You can't truly know someone by appearances. This book has been banned because it depicts an incarceration and an illustration of a same-sex marriage. Next slide. Pink is for Boys by Rob Perlman celebrates breaking from traditional color roles, encouraging kids to express themselves in every color of the rainbow. Features diverse characters, vibrant illustrations, shows that colors are fun and for everyone, whether it's racing cars, playing baseball, loving unicorns, or dressing up. This book has been banned because it pushes back against traditional gender roles. Next slide. Unicorns Are the Worst by Alex William. Unicorns may seem like they are the worst, frolicking, having tea parties, leaving glitter everywhere. While this is practical, goblins work hard and use their imagination wisely. This book's been banned because it features the image of a goblin's butt. And a Moms for Liberty called this pornographic. So if you turn to the next slide, you will see this is why it was banned. This is the pornographic picture Moms for Liberty was very upset about. No David by David Shannon follows David as he gets into trouble doing things that he's not supposed to do, with the repeated reminder, no David, throughout the book. Despite his antics, the book highlights the unconditional love that parents have for their children. This book was banned because it includes a young boy running through the streets with no clothes. So if you, next slide will show you why this book was banned, because he ran out the door and you could see the back of David. Next slide. And I know I'm running out of time, so if you could skip this one. Skip this one. Okay, Olgie. Olgie is a bunny, and he goes to a new town. And in this thing, they wear either a dress or a sweater. Olgie isn't sure why the clothes matter so much until he's told he needs to decide, is he wearing a dress or is he wearing a sweater? This book was banned because it challenged traditional gender norms and promotes gender fluidity. So if you, next slide will show when Olgie is confronted by the other bunnies that, what is that? Is it a dress or is it a sweater? Because that's going to decide, are you a boy or are you a girl? And Olgie doesn't want to decide. Next slide, please. You could skip this one. Next one. Next one. The Case for Loving is about the United States Supreme Court, Loving v. Virginia, where a white man and black woman had to go to the Supreme Court in order to get married. And it's been banned because the book talks and shows an interracial marriage and an interracial family. Next slide. Born in the Water by Nicole Hannah Jones is told the story of a family through grandma's stories of ancestors who were brought to America as slaves in 1619 and how they preserved their identity. This book was banned because it's part of the 1619 Project that reframes American history by focusing on slavery and the contribution of Black Americans. Next slide. This shows a picture of the story inside of it. Okay, this is my favorite author, so I had to make sure I got to him. So in 2021, Central York School in Pennsylvania banned I Am Rosa Parks and I Am Martin Luther King Jr. for having divisive or bad ideas. The author of the book, Brad Metzler, actively opposed the ban, spoke out at school board meetings, and publicly advocated against censorship. He sent copies of his books to teachers in the school district and to free little libraries in Pennsylvania. Well, with community members, they succeeded in getting the ban reversed. Then in 2023 and 2024, his book, I Am Billie Jean King, was banned because it discusses her sexual orientation. Next slide will show you some of the reasons why they've been banned. And I love these books to teach with because it always has the hero or whoever's the star drawn as a child. So throughout the book, they're super small. Throughout the book, it's there. So again, Rosa got banned for not getting off the bus. Martin Luther King Jr. was banned because he spoke up for civil rights, and Billie Jean King because she said she loved another woman and married her instead. Next slide. Thank you. Those are my references for what we did. Thank you, Luke, for being my slide guide. I don't know what happened with that.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I just sat here taking so many notes. For those of us listening, here you go. You should definitely click on this Eventbrite. We have a banned book club that we do. And if any of this kind of resonated with you, you should definitely feel free to join our book club. We're having it tomorrow, actually. So you should stop by. There we go. And then just a quick question for you, Alicia. You're working with young children, and so you've probably had access to a lot of these books. Have any of these book bans impacted your students? And if so, how do you navigate that as an educator?
So far in Colorado, we've been pretty chill about book bans. Not much has been banished this or that. I've started with my kids this week. We only had school 2 days this week because we had snow days, but we started I Am Martin Luther King with my 5th graders and my 2nd graders. We started reading I Am Rosa Parks, and they're fired up. They want to go make protest signs. They want to go walk around the building. They're already mad about it. And like I said, I've used Mr. Metzler's books with a lot of my students and a lot of my curriculum, and my kids are like, now which one are we reading? We haven't read this one, or we have these 10 more. So, hopefully it hasn't been an issue yet. Like I said, I work with multilingual learners, so this is a lot of history they don't know anyway. So their parents may not as know it well either. So I haven't faced that much pushback from parents in my position.
Thank you so much. Definitely look into the chat and see all the love you're getting. Everyone, please give Alicia her flowers.
Yeah, and thanks so much for being with us tonight to share. I can tell that you have you're coming from a place of a lot of love when you're reading these stories to these kids. I can tell you're really passionate about this. As Carmen said, we've been hosting our book club, but we've been reading titles that, adults or young adults read. And so it's really just mind-blowing to see that list and the reasons why those books are being banned. We were just talking we have a chat, like a group chat, the 3 of us, about how we need to do like a picture books banned book club, basically. So we'll be in touch, Alicia. Just know that. More to come. So I have the honor tonight to introduce our next speaker as well. We'll make a transition to Miss Jennifer Showalter, who's a fellow Washingtonian here. Jen Showalter started her teaching career in 2000 at Lewis and Clark High School in Spokane, Washington, and continues to teach there today. She earned a BA in English from Washington State University, and an MA in English Literature from Eastern Washington University. She's taught African American literature since 2018, was among the first group of teachers to pilot the AP African American Studies class, and is a certified College Board consultant. In 2022, Jennifer was a co-winner of the Spokane Neighborhood Action Partners Justice Award for having organized raising nearly $50,000 for Spokane families in need of utilities assistance during COVID-19 pandemic. Incredible in the classroom and in the community. Excited to hear tonight about The Art of Jacob Lawrence from Jen Showalter. Welcome, Jen. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. And thank you so much to the Institute for this opportunity. I saw something on my feed the other day about when someone with a lot of knowledge dies, you lose a library. And I'm not saying I have a lot of knowledge, but let's just say I've read a lot of stuff and I feel like, dang it, it's in my head. I need to get it out to people. So, and I've taught a lot of things. So this particular topic is especially meaningful to me for a variety of reasons, but mostly because I can teach about Jacob Lawrence in both of the AP classes that I teach at Lewis and Clark. Is that showing okay on the screen? Okay. So my objective here is just to talk about how you can teach history through art, with Jacob Lawrence being the key example here. Jacob Lawrence was an artist in Harlem who was influenced by many of the artists of the Harlem Renaissance, but he was prolific right about when he was about 20 years old, which was incredible. I mean, he got his fame very early in life through some unique circumstances. So he talks about how, and this is one of his pieces of artwork that shows Harlem. He said, as children of the Harlem community, we grew up being told about these great Black heroes and heroines. And he said he heard it from Black librarians, teachers in after-school Black history clubs, which that was the first I'd ever heard of that, being from the West Coast and having never even been to New York. And this was back in the 1930s. Street corner orators, the artist Augustus Savage, artist Aaron Douglas. So he was surrounded by this very rich artistic tradition that was unique for a kid to grow up with. And at one point, he says, I knew by the time I was 15 that I want to do this for the rest of my life, to paint his world around him. So what he intended was especially to create visual works of art that would inform and inspire Black people. He said that he wanted ultimately to see and respect, to portray humanity, see and respect the beauty of man, every man, and then again talked a lot about how, and I saw this in a lot of his interviews, which you can explore on YouTube. He desired to be an artist to the people within the Black community, and he made hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pieces. So he's definitely had a big impact. One thing this really ties into is if you teach AP African American Studies or African history, the idea of a griot and the West African tradition of storytelling. A few theorists have said, Jacob Lawrence was one of these griots. He was a teller of accounts. He was giving us a text of remembrance for not only the time period in which he lived, but past events, which we'll see in his pieces about Toussaint Louverture, Harriet Tubman, and others. So his art is definitely an expression of cultural heritage, like the griot would serve in the West African communities. What I really was struck by in my research about him was how unique his experience was. He didn't have any restrictions on him for how his art got created. One of the artists of the Harlem Renaissance, Charles Alston, said, it would have been a mistake to try to teach Jake. He was teaching himself, finding his own way. All he needed was encouragement and technical information. So his style is not, his style is very unique. It's very much his own. It's what organically came out of him without restrictions. And that's a pretty rare and beautiful experience, especially being an African-American man in the 1930s. Another interesting thing is his process. So he had this set of panels that were no larger than a little bit bigger than a notebook piece of paper. And they were, he would lay them all out and he would conduct, he would have a topic in mind, like let's say Harriet Tubman. He'd do a ton of research. He'd go to the Schoenberg Center. He would visit the library. He had access to museums in New York, but he would research things and then make a detailed set of drawings for what he wanted to express, these different scenes from, let's say, Harriet Tubman's experiences. Then he'd draw them on the panels, and then he painted each one color at a time. So we'd start with the lighter colors so that you could have that in your background. And let's say he's using yellow. He would go to where he's going to have that same yellow in all of the panels. And then he would go to his next color. And I'm sure there were some adjustments along the way, but it was this idea of being holistic and thinking of this series as a narrative. Again, that idea of being a storyteller, which was really unique and prolific because some of these series he creates, like for the Great Migration, for instance, there's 60 of them. So it's pretty incredible what he achieved. He also really supports democracy. Holy cow. Not only in his methods, but in his topics too. He does a whole series on American history. This is one showing the Washington crossing the Delaware, but you don't see Washington. You see the turmoil. You see the scariness of war, the sharp points that are there with the bayonets on the ends of these guns. So it's changing that narrative of what American history was or could be, or as Ivory Kennedy Jr. said about patriotism, like recapturing it. It's an interesting. It would be interesting to study Jacob Lawrence in that purpose. And he also was a teacher. He fell into it without meaning to. But by the time he does in 1946, he doesn't quit until 1983. He ends at the University of Washington. And he said, it was something that he enjoyed tremendously. It stimulated his own artistic growth. And coincidentally enough, my Aunt Christine went to U of W in the 70s and had him as a teacher, and said he was one of the kindest people and was so forgiving of her artistic abilities. Said, she was trying real hard, but he would be very diplomatic and say, I can see you have a lot of energy there. Just wonderful human being. And lovely to see that he was a teacher too. So this is an example of the different series that he created. So if you were interested in teaching history through art, you could do that with Toussaint Louverture and the Haitian Revolution, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman. The Migration series is probably his most well-known. Builders, the idea of building and creating is through a variety of his artworks throughout his collections. He also covers John Brown, Harlem. He did a war series. He served in the Coast Guard during World War II. He has a section on the South. There's a section too on mental health, about a hospital where he was voluntarily hospitalized for depression. He does a really great series. 30 out of the 60 were done from the history of the American people. He covered Hiroshima after the fact in 1983. And then he does a series on Genesis as well, some reprinted from earlier pieces. So why teach art through history? I got this quote from one of the researchers who studies him. They said, through these images, students can gain a better understanding of history, and they can better imagine the events and people involved, empathize with different perspectives, establish emotional connections, construct meaningful cause-effect interpretations, and reflect on implications for the present and the future. And art just gives us so much that we can do with it. And I'll show you some examples of that as we go here. So another thing that I think is helpful is knowing what kind of themes he ties in. But the biggest one was about the human struggle, the beauty of the human struggle. And in this picture, we have Harriet Tubman sawing a log, with this very strong body. He was a champion. He was a feminist, definitely. He focused on heroic, authoritative women. He was raised by a lot of women and was tutored or helped mentored by Augusta Savage as well. The idea of collectivity, of all of us being in something together, hope and resistance too, are all these democratic qualities that I think the Institute is trying to remind us of as well. So like I said, the pieces, they are not very big, so you have to get pretty close to them. And he said, he wanted to communicate things that would strike the observer right away. So regardless of the age of a person, and he has some children's books too, you could get something from it. You can tell what the message is. There's not a perfection or an idealized quality to his figures. But you can get a sense of the action and what's going on the panel or the canvas just by looking at it. So some ways to approach teaching this, I think, in terms of maybe at the high school level, is I want to dig into this myself at some point. I haven't tested it yet, but the case method study option of where you give kids like a bunch of images and you say, here's the topic, like the Great Migration. And you say, okay, it's your job to figure out what do all these images symbolize through their own discovery, their own research, their own inquiries, and then to have a discussion about what they think. What do these different images show for this particular event or person? It's also something you can do with emulating the artist's style to convey a historical event or idea. I have my students often do a self-portrait in the style of Jean-Michel Basquiat when We're learning about him in contemporary art. And they love that because, you know, his style is just very, it has no rules. So they don't have to make anything perfect, so to speak. And then there's also this idea of some kind of evaluative analysis where they could predict what Lawrence might have created for a contemporary series on blank, you know, something that's happening now, maybe thinking back to the Black Lives Matter movement, maybe thinking to, you know, some current event. And what do you think he would want to cover and paint in today's world? And in terms of the classes that I teach and how this could tie into something you may be teaching, AP African American Studies or African American History, it specifically has us teaching a few of his different pieces in both units, let's see, I think 2 and 3. I was lucky enough to be one of the first 60 teachers to pilot this course. And this picture here represents the event that we got to attend where Henry Louis Gates Jr. was there and we were all nerding out and it was very exciting. So it's been the most rewarding class I've ever taught. But let's say for this class, you've got to teach about the Great Migration, or in any history class for, you know, American history. He breaks it down into 8 different sections, and you can find those online. You can find book versions of it. But one idea I have is taking several of those images and having kids do an optic analysis. Optic analysis means, you know, if you haven't seen this before, it's a way to visually analyze a piece of artwork or just some sort of visual text. And the acronym is for looking at it as an overview. What do you observe? What are the different parts of the image? What do you think about the title? What do you infer or read between the lines? And then what do you think overall, after we discuss all of this, the message or purpose might be? So when I take kids through that, for instance, the one on the far right that has the dividing line between those tables, that's the one that we are required to study in AP Art History. And I put it up on the screen and I'll just say, okay, what do you see? There's no wrong answers. Well, I see this, I see this, I see this. And as they start observing things, the kids have different ideas, they start making some sense out of it. Well, I noticed that everybody on the right is not showing their face. Everybody on the left is showing their face, you know, and you just go through this. And as you discuss these things and get it, like start writing maybe some notes on the board, by the end, you can say, well, what do you think? What was he trying to convey? And you can do this too through having maybe artworks around the room and having students do an optic analysis, maybe put it on a sheet, and then going around the room and making notes on their classmates' presentations or their own observations. So this was an idea that I put together for a conference that I taught last year to some teachers in Ohio, and I had them go through this process. The other thing we did is that in AP classes usually have like a really long list of what we call essential knowledge points or EKs. And so it can be pretty intimidating to try to get through all of them. And one way I've had students do that is I'll take them, I'll have them cut them up into strips, and then they have to match it with one of the paintings that we're talking about, let's say in the migration series. This particular one is coming from Unit 3, where students are learning about the Great Migration. So it's active, they can be out of their seats, it gets them up and around and thinking about things and trying to make connections. Another thing too for this class is we have the benefit of something called AP Classroom. So they build in places where you can create activities, explain the impact of the Great Migration on Black communities and American culture, talk about the causes, all that kind of stuff. So the interactive feature of the website can be very helpful too. And then in art history, like I said, we're covering, oh my gosh, if you don't know how this class is set up, you have to teach everything from prehistory all the way to about the year 2000 in world history through art. And the students are required to know 250 pieces specifically, and the styles of those pieces throughout all those time periods. So we don't have a ton of time to go through individual artists, but I do try to spend some time with this particular piece, like I said. So what was interesting about his works is that he would create these narratives with titles that were telling the story. So out of these 60 panels for The Great Migration, for instance, this one was titled Number 49, but he had this story that went with it. He said, they also found discrimination in the North, although it was much different from that which they had known in the South. You know, speaking of all of these African Americans who had moved from the South to the North. And once the kids, like, if you don't give them that title ahead of time, they often can get to that point themselves too. But you can put these all together collectively. It's very poetic in how he tells these stories along the way. And the narratives are as important as the images. So anybody, I will share this PowerPoint with anybody who's interested, but if you want to dig deeper or you're interested in art analysis, the Khan Academy video that goes along with this is really helpful too. And I also had to do a presentation on this piece for other art history teachers. And so we were asked to create multiple choice questions and free response questions or short answer questions. So I have those incorporated into this PowerPoint as well. I won't go through all the nitty gritty, but if you like the art kind of stuff, you can explore it on your own. But variety of multiple choice questions that are in the style of the AP exam questions. One that's relating to like the historical context, for instance. And a great book, The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson, is a pretty fantastic text about the Great Migration if you're interested in reading more about it. Another one is where we have to compare artists to other artists. So here's a comparison question. Here's one about artistic traditions and how he used some of the style of artists like Picasso and Cubism. In this one, we've got a free response question. So that means, it just means a short answer question. On the AP exam for art history, for instance, the kids have to write 6 essays. So the more you can train them to get those quickly composed within a short amount of time, the better. And we're practicing that all year. So they might get an image like this with a prompt that says, describe how Lawrence represented the figures. Using specific evidence, explain at least 2 ways in which the visual characteristics are typical of modernism in the Harlem Renaissance. So they're having to articulate this, and they only have 15 minutes to do it on the test. So we definitely practice with that a lot. Another multiple choice. This one is another type of the free response question where they're talking about artistic traditions and what this kind of piece might have drawn from. And then this one is an attribution question. So they have to see this and know whose style it is, or at least what time period it came from. So identifying that. And again, these are all pieces from the Migration series. So I know that's maybe applicable to just a few of us who are teaching classes where you have to train them on free response questions or AP multiple choice questions, but I think it's also could be helpful for just discussion ideas too. We were just talking about children's books, and so there are 3 that Jacob Lawrence actually published himself. One of them was an illustration of Aesop's Fables, which I picked up from the library, and it came out in 1997, but he actually does these great black and white illustrations of some of the different fables that are in those traditional stories. He has a version of the Great Migration that is in this children's book form that's pretty great and simplifies things to tell the story of the people who and what happened to them all along the way in a very kid-friendly way. And then another one that is great, and it actually differs from the series he did on Harriet Tubman. The ones that he did in the early in his 20s have some different imagery than the ones he put into Harriet and the Promised Land, which was a book that he put together telling her story and the different influence she had. It's great. In addition to that, there are a couple of children's books that are just about him. One of them is called Jacob Lawrence in the City, really focusing on those like Harlem, the pieces that he created that were much more like where he grew up. And there's another one that's called Jake Makes a World, Jacob Lawrence, a young artist in Harlem, which is fairly new. And I found that one in the library as well. So they're out there. And I've got a bunch of sources. I did a ton of research for this, but to maybe tie things together or to finish things here, and if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer any. This is my favorite piece of his. It says, again, he gives it this title that is a sentence. It's more than just, it's a message. He says, men, and it's a quote too. It also shows all of his scholarship. He did so much research for all of his pieces, but he was inspired by a Marcus Aurelius quote: "Men exist for the sake of one another. Teach them then, or bear with them." And that just makes my heart sing. So if you're interested in anything that I've presented or teaching materials that go along with any of this, I'm absolutely happy to share. I've got my email address on the screen. I'll put that in the chat. And then I also have a learning resources site on the Teachers Pay Teachers page, but you can have anything I have for free. You don't pay for anything. Like if you see something on there and you're like, oh, I like that, just email me and I will send you whatever it is. So I'm happy to share.
All right, Jen. Yeah, this is really incredible stuff. Thank you so much for sharing all this, and take a look in the chat too. There's some kind words coming in for you from the folks in attendance tonight. I'm reading through some of it as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're clearly an expert in this, and I had the pleasure of attending one of Jen's workshops for the AP African American Studies course, and you really do remarkable work throughout that entire curriculum. I was going to ask you what your favorite piece was, and then you answered it at the end. So I have to like pivot off of that question, which is okay. So I'm going to ask you a little bit different question. You teach in Spokane, which I know is a little bit of a blue dot in kind of what is a red sea in Eastern Washington. But I'm just curious about, this is a bigger question than like a Jacob Lawrence specific question, but what has been the experience of the AP African American Studies course in your community? Any like kind of wins or losses in trying to set up the course or teach it, or just generally, how has it been going there?
I have to say I'm very, very, very lucky. I have had almost no pushback. I also, don't tell anybody, but I kind of piloted the course without anybody really, approving it. That, or maybe that didn't happen. I don't know. But I was teaching African-American literature at the time, which is also a college and the high school course. So kids get to double dip now that we have the AP exam, which is pretty fantastic. But it just kind of quietly developed. The one thing that was the thing that sticks out is that I'm white, and I'm in a very white town. Our department is very, very Caucasian. So when this class got offered to begin with, they said, who wants to teach African American literature? And we also offer Native American literature. I just raised my hand and said, I'll do it. I want to try. And it was the scariest thing I've ever tried, because I thought, I'm just an impersonator here. I'm like, am I the right person for this job? But I've thought about it a lot and talked with other educators, and I'm an educator first. And if people like me aren't teaching this, why is it on the shoulders of just African American people to teach it? That seems pretty silly. So now if there's, and it's so complicated, but that's the piece. I think I don't have my own internal conflicts more than I've had with any of the, students. I've never had any parents really say anything, other than I did have one parent complain that I didn't teach about Juneteenth when we were in COVID, and And then I did teach about Juneteenth. Her son just wasn't listening. But, that's the normal kind of parent-teacher interaction you got all the time. So what I do try to do is bring in as many speakers of color as I can. So Eastern Washington University's Africana Studies Department, shout out to Dr. Finney, Dr. O, fantastic educators who come in out of their own time and just talk with my students and give their own experiences. So there's a lot of people in our community who are excited to participate, and like I say, they don't have to listen to my face. They can hear from people who have experienced these things.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks, Jen.
Hey, Jen, I had a question as well. And I want to play off of what you said. First of all, presentation is amazing. The way that you kind of involve art, like art is a storytelling element within itself. I want to point out what you said about, the awareness that you have being white and teaching this stuff. What are some words of encouragement? What are some things that you could share that could either provide guidance or comfort to people that their heart is in the right place and they want to do some of the things that you are, but they might be fearful for that whiteness or not really sure, right? I think about John Brown and his advocacy, right? What are some tips or tricks or words of encouragement that you have for people to be able to step into, not your shoes, but into shoes similar to yours to be doing the work that you're doing?
I think if you're talking about anything that's tough, you've got to be okay with yourself. The self-care topic that we're going to hear about later tonight, I think is a big deal. And if you're not, if I had started this course after I was about 18 or so years into teaching. So, I knew how to teach. Now I needed to challenge myself. So jumping in with both feet and just immersing yourself, educating yourself, reading a lot, and being self-deprecating and honest with your students, saying, I need help. I don't know all of these things. And and even when we were piloting this course to begin with, all of us, regardless of our backgrounds, we were all saying, okay, I don't know what this is about, so we're going to research this together. That togetherness. And you've reminded me too, I need to get my first period right now to open up because, again, they're majority white. They're afraid. They're afraid to talk. They're afraid to say anything. And, the African-American kids in the room were like, well, I don't have to say everything here. Come on, let's all participate. So that's still a struggle that for me to get my students to be more open and not afraid to talk. But education, and asking questions of other educators and becoming a part of a community like Institute for Common Power or the AP African American Studies community that's very, very vibrant is incredibly helpful.
No, I appreciate that. I think everybody listening, encourage other folks to, right? We need everybody that has a voice, a heart, and a conscience for the movement and the experience that we're having right now to reclaim what it means to be an educator, to reclaim what it means to be an American, and reclaims what it means to be just a empathetic citizen, right? And I think one way is to do just that, right? Encourage to have these conversations and be okay with them. Jennifer, please be sure to check out the comments in the chat. It looks like you got lots of love going on in there. So please make sure that you see the love that has been given to you. And thanks again for your presentation for sure.
Thank you guys. This is great.
Yeah, thanks, Jen.
All right. So we are working to get our next presenter situated. So let me pull up the description and then we will get started. For those of you that are in the chat, right, if there is anybody that you think would benefit from this teach-in, benefit from hearing any of the topics that we have heard thus far, please make sure that you send it to anybody. Jen, make sure that your message goes to everyone so that everybody can see it as well. Make sure that your settings, for those of you that are sending flowers to the presenters, make sure that your setting is set for you to send it to everyone so that everybody can see. All right. All right, so our next presenter is Dr. Jordan Posey from the Midwest. We got some more Midwest folks in the house. We're not as lonely anymore with me here in Ohio. Dr. Jordan Posey is a Chicago-born educator, organizer, and nonprofit leader whose work bridges classrooms, communities, and global learning spaces. His career is grounded in the belief that education should transform society and that community, joy, and imagination are powerful forms of resistance. Across every chapter of his journey, he has centered the work of building collective care, restoring sense of possibility, and designing supportive ecosystems for educators and the communities they serve. He also advances justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, political education, and community organizing at local, state, and national levels. He holds a doctorate in curriculum advocacy and policy from National Louis University and is completing an executive master's in nonprofit administration at the University of Notre Dame. Above all, Jordan is a proud father, partner, brother, and son, roles that keep him grounded in the communities he seeks to uplift. Dr. Posey, we are going to turn it over to you, and thank you for sharing your presentation with us.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Technical difficulties aside, also, anyone ever realize that whenever you have to do a bio, it's the one time you get to list all of the things that you never actually get a chance to talk about? So tonight, building on a lot of the other work that my fellow educators have been doing, we're going to talk about the anatomy of social movements. And what that means is we're going to walk away from here because the teacher and me can never not give you all just a few clear goals. I'm hoping that you leave with a working definition of structural oppression and racism. I want you to have a few frameworks for identifying how social movements win and how they operate, and then the opportunity to reflect on where you fit in our current landscape. And so on our next slide, I want us to be able to check in. And so for those of you who haven't used the chat yet, briefly, what defines our current moment? Right. And take this however you will, wherever you are in your activism, in your life, what defines it? So I see struggle. What else? It can be everything from the feelings to the events. We're at a crossroads. I pulled things from that. We have our first Democratic Socialist mayor in New York. We have the Supreme Court getting to debate birthright citizenship. We also have a repudiation by some international powers to a ceasefire. But for you all, where you are and what you're understanding, what defines this moment? The ever-loving existential angst. That's Luke. We can always talk about our existential crisis. Hope. Love it. So as we go through this, what I want you to anchor yourself in patriotism. I tell people all the time, you'll never run me out of a country that my ancestors built, whether they had a say in it or not, they made it. But so to dive in, a lot of people are always going to tell you that, like, hey, there's racism happening. There are things going on here, but we don't ever actually talk about what that fully means. And so what you'll see on my next slide is we're going to talk about structural racism and oppression. And so that first layer, this is individual, right? One of the best quotes I've ever been given is your first mind is what you've been socialized into. Your second is who you actually are. And so we receive all of these biases growing up about how to dress, about what makes us the gender or the religion or the person we are. And so those personal beliefs are incredibly ingrained in us. And it's often difficult because once we start realizing that we're hurting people, how do you deal with that cognitive dissonance that people that loved you, people that raised you, cared for you, taught you things that would hurt other people? And so our personal beliefs are things that initially we have no real say in how we receive them, but as we grow, it becomes our responsibility to unlearn, to reframe, and to move through. Because from our individual beliefs, what we receive is our interpersonal interaction. So here, oh, can you still hear me? The phone did a thing.
Yes, we can still hear you.
Awesome. So interpersonal, this is when all those things that we have in our head, in our heart, in our spirits, we start enacting them, right? So if I've been told that boys wear blue, that has no real bearing on anyone else until I see a boy wear pink and I'm like, boys aren't supposed to do that. And I treat that person differently. It's when we start enacting, and here's where we get all of those microaggressive behaviors and at a bigger level, those overt isms, right? What you carry in your heart is one thing. And as you go on that individual journey to unlearn and to heal and grow through them, it's a journey in and of itself. But once we start enacting them on other people, then we start seeing how students are disadvantaged by their teachers' perceptions of self, right? Which results in, we know that one of the largest markers for gifted recommendation is, does that teacher have a racial identity similar to their teacher, which locks some people out and bridges barriers for others, depending on who's in the classroom. But then we start looking at institutional, right? So these are the practices and policies of whatever institution you're in. And institutions think, hey, where do you work? Does your doctor's office have a policy that you're just like, that really doesn't seem great? A bowling alley in Chicago had a dress code that was no do-rags, no streetwear, no Timberlands. We're like, that's a very specific set of policies meant to disadvantage certain people, right? And so institutional policies play into this. And so at all of these levels, the way that we address them is differently, right? When we talk about individual biases, individual racism, and enactment of oppression on others, I can call you in or I can call you out. You're still a person, right? When we start talking about the interpersonal, here's where we can name it. Here's where we can check people. Once we start dealing with institutional, here's where we talk about things like, hey, we're going to boycott this institution because we still have a certain level of leverage at as a smaller group. It's when we talk about structural oppression that we're going to lean into tonight, because our movements have been very particular. Because when we think about structures, this is the different systems that we live under interacting. And so, as we are protesting and pushing back against the federal government and other systems in this day and age, if it feels like we aren't winning, that's an incorrect way of looking at it. We're not winning wholesale because these systems are not one thing. If we get a reform in the education system, that is a win. However, structural oppression relies on the education system intersecting with the penal system, intersecting with the child welfare system, right? So there used to be a policy that if a student was late too many times, they could be arrested. If they were arrested, they could be taken from their parents. If they were taken from their parents obviously can lose their job and things like that. But at the core of that is, if you lived too far from your school and there wasn't adequate public transportation, you were going to be late. And so what we see then is all of these systems conspiring to oppress and enact harm on marginalized communities, on historically ignored and disadvantaged communities. And so for the sake of this evening, these are the definitions I'm going to call on when I'm talking about how our movements have been constructed, the underlying assumptions and what they have to push back at. Am I making sense? 30 seconds, you can jump to the chat. Tell me, it's like, Jordan, I have absolutely no clue what you're just talking about. But before I pull this one off and go on to the next one and fritter, are we still, Ivory, you still with me? Have I lost you? Are you like, why are you doing all the things? All right, dope. Ivory says we're still good.
We're with you. Let's roll.
Dope. All right, so we'll go to the next one because, I'm a sucker for at least throwing it up there. When we look at ICE zip ties children in a horrific raid on a Chicago building, okay, this is one thing for us to see. Boom, ICE, an institution, an arm of the federal government, going into a South Side apartment and taking people. Well, there's a lot going on there because to some people, they don't even deserve protection. So when we're reflecting on this, why might that be? See, there was a big push for body cams. I'm going to tell you all a little secret about body cams as it relates to structural racism and oppression. Body cams only matter if the people you're seeing on the other side you view as human and deserving of protection. And the reasons we as a society do not believe that some individuals are deserving of protection is because we have been socialized to not see them as deserving of that. And so when you have people who are zip tied, children who are taken, federal agents storming into places, where were they? Okay, well, they're on the South Side, which has been historically marginalized and disadvantaged. Why were they able to do it? because they were given a level of access in this community that they would not be given in other communities. Why has the framing about this been so different? Because they're calling on the individual beliefs that people have about what people who are Black and brown on the south side of Chicago are, how they should be treated, and how they've been socialized. And so we move through those layers because now you also have a housing system that is being intersected by our federal enforcement systems. And so, as you're looking at the news, as you're being a part of communities and movements, we have to interrogate what have we been socialized to believe, and how does that allow us to cause harm, even as we espouse community and support. And so, let me give you 4 pillars for defining social movements, right? This next one is, I tried to break it down as clear and straightforward as possible, and I'm a sucker for a good quote, blame the English teacher training on me. But the number one thing that our movements always have been, and you'll see on the next slide, is we first and foremost are rooted in imagination. And so this is for a few reasons, because I'm going to tell you something right now. If you are sitting with people and they are looking at all of the problems that we face, whether it be my students are failing or this government doesn't care, if you ask them, do you really believe that we could win? And they pause, it means that their imagination has been colonized. We cannot succeed because you cannot imagine a world where we are successful. And so the first thing that we have to do is recapture our imagination. We talk about being a little delusional. Here is where we have to be. Our movements have to be a bit delusional because the reality we exist in is oppressive, is capitalistic, is harmful. And so Mariam Kaba talks about we have to create the conditions for dismantling prisons, police, and surveillance. Those conditions exist because we view others as undeserving of our protection or as perpetrators of violence. Because we can't imagine a world where we don't have police. We can't imagine a world where schools aren't funded by property tax. We can't imagine a world where we don't invest in our military more than anything else. And so the first thing that we have to recapture as we're defining our movement, we have to be a bit delusional. We have to take our imagination back. You have to look at your schools, your jobs, the places you pass and say, I know what that is right there, but the revolutionary spirit in me cannot see it operating that way for the rest of my life. And you have to hold that vision so close that when everything else tells you it's not possible, it doesn't exist. It can't permeate that because everything else that we're going to organize around has to be based in that imaginative spirit. And so the next thing that we do, because you have this imaginative belief, I have told you that it is okay to be delusional in this one regard, okay? We challenge arguments of bad faith. Omar El-Kad, in his book, One Day Everyone Will Have Been Against This, talks about the fact that we are having the wrong conversations and we're letting the people who are causing harm define the language that matters, right? So when we talk about the current ICE raids, they're detainees. And that's important because if you're detained, you haven't been arrested. If you haven't been arrested, you're not subject to due process. If you haven't been arrested, you aren't expected to have a lawyer, and people don't expect you or haven't been socialized to expect you to have a lawyer. If you're detained, that period is indefinite because the promise is always that there's something else out there. And so we have allowed the people who are causing our harm to dictate the landscape that we're battling on. And so every argument then is in bad faith. Right? It doesn't matter whether or not we are talking, like I believe that we're talking about abortion in a debate, let's say. If I'm letting you define the language that I use, how I feel about it, what I'm allowed to say about it, this is a bad faith argument and nothing will ever come. I have already lost because I'm engaging you in a space that there is nothing good that can come of it. And so our movements are always pushing back against language that we know is reductionist, that we know is going to cause harm, and that we know no matter how many facts and figures and stories we craft, we're going to be unsuccessful. And then it doesn't start and end with one person. We have seen how many of our leaders killed, unfortunately, heartbreakingly. But the fact that people believed by killing them, they killed the movement And in some cases where successful means that we've had to go back and re-envision, what does this look like if that person isn't here? What does this look like if this wasn't about one person, but about a movement, about our collective? Which leads us to, we understand that community is the answer to concerns of our safety and security. Because when we talk about we can take care of ourselves, when we talk about community care, when we talk about mutual aid, the answer is always, but how will you do it without X, Y, or Z system? A community is not a community unless there's someone in it that you don't want there. If everyone in your community gets along, it's a club. And I don't do clubs. Okay. Your community is supposed to be there to help challenge you to grow. And when things are hurting us, we solve them together. Our strength is in our collective understanding of our shared destiny. And so we're going to breeze through just a few people with this. So we challenge arguments of bad faith. The social contract is broken. This video went viral during the Black Lives Matter uprisings where people asked, why are you destroying these Targets and these Walgreens? It's because the social contract was broken. We challenged an argument of bad faith. Kimberly Jones straight up said, the agreement is if I do a crime, I go to jail. But the people who are supposed to enforce that law are the ones killing us and nothing happens. The contract is broken. We don't own things. And when we have, you've destroyed them and you haven't faced repercussions. And so that argument of, well, why are you destroying your things? We don't own this. And so the vocal and full-throated and passionate way that she challenged that is a part of this. We could not let that argument happen because then we're talking about property over the perseverance and preservation of Black and brown life. And so we also have to be a little rooted in imagination, not just in what the future could be, but in how we go about it. So I'm sure we all remember the 2020 presidential election. 2020 was great. Everything was happening, super cool, no problems. But as you'll see on the next slide, anyone remember what started happening to a lot of those large scale presidential conventions or like rallies? That they were empty because K-pop fans and TikTokers and Twitter users started sharing that the tickets were free and they would just take them all and no one would show up. It's because they had to be delusional enough to believe that whatever state they were in, whatever opportunity they had, if they seized it, they could embarrass someone, that they could make their voices heard. And it started having an effect. Right? They went from boasting, oh, we've gotten rid of every ticket and it's going to be a packed house. It seats 19,000. We're going to have standing room only, to having less than 6,000 people there because all the tickets were gone, not by people who had ever intended on being there. That imaginative spirit has led to incredible amounts of creativity. It's also led to some of the programs and policies and ways of interacting that have been soul sustaining. And so we've also seen this in the Montgomery bus boycott. So we all know it. Everybody knows all the major names in the Montgomery bus boycott. So here's where, if you saw my LinkedIn and I drug you here on that, you're already here, so you don't get to say anything. But Georgia Gilmore in the Montgomery bus boycott was a person who realized, oh, if people are doing this, they're going to get hungry. So I'm going to sell sandwiches. I'm going to sell pork chops. I'm going to make food. And I'm going to reinvest that money into the movement. Next slide, please. And so here's where we talk about it doesn't start or end with one person. Yes, Sister Rosa sat down and helped us start the legal challenges. Yes, we had Martin Luther King keeping everybody organized. Yes, we had all the organizers in the back. But one of the things that Ms. Gilmore realized was a lot of the women who wanted to still support but were afraid of losing their jobs couldn't be seen advocating in that same way. So what did they do? They cooked with her. They helped her make enough food to sell and reinvest. And so when people saw women together just making food, thought none the wiser, but they were silently finding ways of reinvigorating and supporting and financially providing for a movement that needed multiple entry points. Every person had to do their job. Every person had to find a job. And that's very different because not everyone marched. And I know right now, and this is one that I struggle with as well sometimes, we want to be on the front lines and you see the massive protests and there are a million people there. And sometimes you wonder, well, should I have been there? But if that is not your ministry, if that is not where you feel that you are the most needed or that your talents are the most aligned, We've always had people who found other ways to prepare and to hold the fort down. That's what our communities of resistance are a part of. And so it's also us realizing that our communities of resistance are key to our safety and security. Where'd you get your free breakfast? Where'd you get a lot of the other things? Well, you get it from the Black Panther Party. Okay. So Black Panther Party programming was an indicative example of our community is the answer to our concerns. Yeah, our neighborhood watch started with the Black Panther Party watching the police. WIC had a semblance from the Black Panther Party giving food programs to families. We looked at what gaps existed. And rather than waiting or saying that we can't have it or it won't be good, we had to identify that our community is hurting. And if there is a concern, so we also do a root analysis of where does crime come from? Because people will tell you, you're inherently ungovernable or bad. Well, people do crime when they don't have resources. And the best way I can ensure that you will do crime is to not give you a house, not give you food, and make you feel insecure. So the easiest way then to ensure your safety and security is to give you food, help provide housing and medical things, and then watch these changes happen. But we can do that better in community because I can also talk to you about what things are missing. I can talk to you about your actions and how you're harming the collective and how we need to be better prepared to care for you. And so when we are thinking about how we restore and build community, and I bring this back to a lot of my teachers as well, because if you've ever wondered why you've used all of the RTI practices and all of the common language and the healing circles and things, but kids still aren't buying in, it is because we cannot interject community healing into oppressive systems. We're trying to replicate all the things that we know are self-sustaining and shove them into the systems that are antithetical to that. Our community has to break those systems for it to fully live. And sometimes all it is a matter of realizing what do we need to survive and thrive and feel safe, and how do we do that? And so I'm sure after all of this, like those are really great thematic principles for something, but what do I do? And so one of the really great models for this that I feel distills a lot of things down is the Social Change Ecosystem by Deepa Iyer. And so at the core of this are core values, right? We look at equity and liberation and justice and solidarity that guides everything. But this also takes a look at what are all of the actual roles that people need to fill in our ecosystem, in our community of care, right? Like if we're going to be successful, who is doing what and what does that role do? And we're going to look at really briefly like what these actually are, but when you see all of these movements, remember that we're going to lose those stories if we don't hold on to them. What's the quote? Like every time an elder dies, like a library burns to the ground, our storytellers are important. The people who get out and share what's happening are important. If you are the person that knows somebody, yeah, maybe that's your gift to this. You are the connector between these movements so that they can consolidate power so that we're not replicating structures. And so as you're looking at this image, let me give you a second because on the next one, I broke it down for you, right? We took it right from Deepa. What do these roles actually do? Well, if you're a weaver, you see those lines of connectivity. You see how one friend here is a friend there and they can be working together. If you're an experimenter, you are the mad scientist of all of this. Who were the first people, like who were the people who realized that, hey, if we have umbrellas, we can block tear gas? Anybody ever think about who's the first person that realized like, hey, milk works when we are getting gas and we really should have a bunch of that? Our frontline responders, when we have had food shortages, we just watched what happens when SNAP benefits aren't there. And there were so many people who, again, protesting is a part of it. Those are our disruptors. Those are our people who are making our voices loud and unavoidable and terrifying to the people who would harm us. But when we were back home and people were hungry, we had frontline responders. We had people who were making sure that meals were still being made and stomachs were still full so that we could make it to another day, because you have to be delusional enough to think that amidst these horrible things, we're still going to make it. We have visionaries. Above all else, one of the reasons MLK was a part of the movement and successful and incredibly beautiful in it is the vision was clear. We talk about A. Philip Randolph, we talk about Bayard Rustin, we talk about all the organizers behind the scenes, but the vision, those people who can stand in front of you and tell you what the world will look like in 20 years, and you see it so clearly that you have no choice but to run towards it. And so as you look at this, because I won't belabor all of them with my time dwindling, really start to think about, what do you bring into spaces? And is that the same as what you've been asked to do and asked to bring? Because oftentimes we get pushed into spaces because we have a certain skill set, but that means that you're only going to be able to do it for so long. We burn out, and we're all going to get tired regardless, but nothing will burn you out quicker than being asked to give a gift that you were not willing or ready to use for others. We're hurting you by asking you to help us. And a part of our communities are holding our boundaries and recognizing that I still need to hold something back for me. And so what I broke down finally for the last two is there are just kind of two columns that I want us to think about, and I leave you with. When you're thinking about us, you, an individual, what are your core values? What roles are you best suited for? And then in that role, when a crisis happens, what role should you play? During some of the uprisings, I am not fast anymore. I'm old, got a bad back. So needless to say, I wasn't downtown with folks, but when people were asking for rides out of what was happening, went with friends and got them, because I can do that. When people needed food, hey, we make sure that we have people connected to resources. How do I connect with my current ecosystem? And not just because things are going wrong. If you're only talking to the people in your community when things are going wrong, you don't have a community. This is what good is happening, what harm is happening. How do we show up? How do we build this? And because I want you to continue being delusional just a bit, if your wildest dreams for society actually happened, what would the world look like? And are you willing to divest from the privilege that you currently have to make it happen? And I say this as someone who can be both a perpetrator of masculinity and can cause harm and can still suffer from racism. Because when I think about my wildest dreams, I have to also take a step back and say, I will not be able to buy into the patriarchy in the way that I can at times if my wildest dreams happen. And is that a conversation that you're willing to have? And then for our movements, are we encouraging multiple action? If your organization is only telling you one way to engage, they're struggling to really mobilize you then. If you can only do one thing, then you're narrowing the number of people that are being called to your mission, or you're forcing people to give talents or skills that they don't have or that don't restore them. And then how do we define self-care? One of the misnomers about self-care, as it was talked about with bell hooks, and Audre Lorde had some things, but like from a revolutionary standpoint, self-care is supposed to help prepare me to be back with you. And what it's been turned into is a very capitalistic, indulgent, spa day, spend all of my money type thing, which, hey, I love my video games. Anybody who knows, sucker for it. But that is isolating, and I know that. Sometimes I have to. Sometimes I need to step back and be with me so I can be with you. But if all of my self-care is only spending my money and giving back into the system that's harming you and taking me away from you, then my self-care has not prepared me to be back in my community. And so how is your self-care? How are the things that you're doing and the conversations you're having and the ways that you're engaging with your people, healing your heart, restoring you, but also preparing you to be back with them? And then how are you resting? Rest is revolutionary. Joy and love are revolutionary. Okay? How are you doing that? How are you stopping your job from taking that extra time because it's yours? And then is the work that we're doing asking more of you than you can give? Like, are we reinforcing the systems that we hope to dismantle? As somebody who's worked in the nonprofit sector, nonprofits are some of the worst perpetrators of this because we call on the mission. schools are some of the worst perpetrators of this because you're supposed to love kids. But if I love kids and I love the mission and I love the future, I also have to be alive for it. And so, how do I step back and make sure that I am not bleeding myself dry to pave the way forward? And so, how are you divesting as a movement, as an organization, as an institution from our current power structures? Because if all we're doing is replicating them, then they've still won. And so, that is all I have. That is our kind of anatomy of a social movement. Thank you.
Dr. Posey dropping lots of I don't know what to call them, gems, diamonds.
Just randomly showing up and doing stuff.
I had a question for you, and then I'll let others jump in. You talk about this need for a little bit of delusion, and you started off with the initial mention. I was taking notes. You started off with the initial mention of ancestors building this country and knowing that we have a place in here. From enslavement to now, I kind of want to pose a question that you asked us earlier. What type of delusion do we need for the moment that we face right now? And what would that moment be? What would that word be for the moment we face now from what you had us do earlier?
If I think about it right now, and all right, so I'm the joy and hope and love guy. You all know, like I'm also super petty. Okay. And I need to frame this for me because I'm still a brother from the South Side. If you are struggling with your mental health, which I'm gonna tell y'all right now, I had like 2 panic attacks last week, whole life's falling apart. But let me tell you the truth. There are some politicians that have harmed my country. I can't leave this world before them. If you are struggling and you just can't find another reason today, but you think that you are doing good work, a part of my delusion is I got to be here longer than them. Today is not the day. If I'm looking at the news and that alert says that they are still here going to vote on a Senate bill that's going to take somebody's rights away, then dang it, I got to take my meds, I got to drink my water, got to have my coffee, got to have a good cry, and Mitch McConnell's not going to outlive me. Okay, can't happen. But also a part of that delusion is, what is your wildest dream? Right? Like, because if your dream is only for you, then we've also lost community. If you think about your future and you just see you and just your family, then either it is a post-apocalyptic hellscape and you are the only people who made it, or the idea of community has been taken away from you. And so I think a part of our delusion has to be that we find our way back to each other. Right? Like, I see my daughter playing with her classmates and I don't worry about like if they run a little too far out of my sight because somebody's got them. Like, I've started letting her walk part of the way to school by herself, and that's a part of my wildest dream because I remember when I could do it. And I can't let people make me so afraid of my neighbors that she can't walk down the street. And so a part of my delusion in some ways has to be that my community will come back. Everything else around it may change, but our communities have to be reinforced and reinvigorated.
Couldn't have asked for a better answer, sir.
Oh God, who did it? What did I miss? All right. I want to be one of the disruptors and just do it. Yeah,
I
just
was
do
going to
stuff.
say, take a look at all of the love and comments that you got in the chat. You definitely are more than deserving of all of that. And we definitely appreciate the energy and the vibe that the tone that you kind of set for reinvigorating, what is our part and taking care of yourselves. I believe in that. I've been in therapy for almost 8 years. Take care of yourselves because we have to sustain ourselves in order to sustain the movement. So
Yeah. The last thing I'll say, and because you brought up like our ancestors and all that, we lionize the wrong things about our ancestors, right? And I think that there's this really dope thing. You remember when like a lot of movies started coming out and they're like, I don't want to see another slave movie. Okay. Here's my deal. I look at my ancestors like I'm watching a Marvel movie because do you know how amazing you have to be to survive some of the worst and most inhumane things? Right? Like, I don't want less of them. I want more of those moments, more of those joyful moments, more of those moments where because we know how the story ends and the story ends with us being here. right? Like whatever that story right there is on the screen, yeah, it's as horrific as human beings can do to one another. But outside of that, we know that there is at least a happy ending because we are still sitting here trying to figure out a way forward. And it's because of the resolve and the resistance. If you think that they weren't still finding ways to love and joy and build, and that they didn't look out one day and say, this is living hell, but there is going to be a day when it doesn't happen anymore, they had to be delusional. If you are standing on a block where people are being sold and your families are being ripped apart, and we know this from people's diaries that they say, but I am going to see them again. Do you know how delusional that is? And they did. So how dare we ever get up and say like, I'm not going to make it. It ain't going to happen. It's like, can't do it. You got to be delusional, but you can't be delusional by yourself. You've got to text your friends. You've got to text your people and tell them, it's like, hey, do you want to do this really crazy thing today? Even if that really crazy thing is like, go buy random candles for $5 or be upset about the Cracker Barrel logo. Like, come on, you all, for those of you, this is a peek behind the curtain before I leave. For those of you who are not in the Educator Institute, I just randomly like start bothering Ivory sometimes. And that's why, because if the only thing we're talking about is how bad things are, we are not in community. We are not friends. We do not care about each other. We are only doing this work. Tell me about the really bad coffee that you had the other day so that I know that you're still just doing life. Because if the only update I get is about how you're fighting, then the system is still taking your life, and I can't let you take me down with you, in which case we can't be in community anymore. So that's my time. I love you.
Jordan, it's always so great to hear from you. Okay, and with that, we have one more. We have Miss Brenda Nelson, and I'm going to read your introduction if you'd like to start setting up your slides. Brenda has been in the Seattle Public Schools for 19 years working in special education. Teaching in the urban middle school she attended brings joy to Brenda as she is now seeing her classmates' grandchildren in the building. Having the community connection makes a difference because parents know she understands and has the cultural background. Brenda is a wife, a daughter to her 89-year-old mother, and the mother of 2 young adult daughters who, like mom, have an affinity for working with youth. Her biggest desire is to inspire those around her with encouragement, love, and a listening ear of support. Her new journey of self-care is at a time and space of learning how to love herself. Giving of yourself through family, work, church, and community can leave you depleted. It's imperative to take time for you. It will pay long dividends, as well as showing her daughters and others how to care for themselves. Only you can care for you. The quote by Audre Lorde says it best: self-care is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation. Without further ado.
Let me unmute. And good evening, everyone. I'm really happy and excited to be here. This is my first real big kind of public speaking event, so bear with me. Thank you. Right there. Okay. I've got my daughter here by my side, helping to guide. Now, this one? Oh, yeah, chair. Okay. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll go from beginning.
If you go back to where it says slideshow.
Okay, there's a lot of, there it is. There's a lot of things covering it. Slide. It's right under there.
If there's something covering it, if you go all the way to the bottom, in the bottom right-hand side, there's like a little easel icon. It's very small, bottom right-hand side.
You see that?
Yep, go straight down. Just go straight down. Keep going down. Yep.
Oh, the easel. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. What a lineup you've had. And Dr. Posey kind of set some things up for me as he started talking about self-care. It's a journey that I have taken seriously as I mature I'm still hip, as I like to tell my students, but you know, I can't stop the numbers from coming. And I know that life comes on and you've got to do more and more as you, each birthday that you have. Self-care that you deserve. Self, so I'm talking about you, not someone sitting next to you, not your mom, not your children. We're talking about you tonight. And care. How do you love yourself? What do you do to help preserve yourself and fill your needs? Because you deserve that. Okay. Next slide. Okay. So I'm going to just start by saying that all this came about, happened to be at Goodwill one day, looking through the book section, had some specific topics that I was looking for an event. And this book, The Extremely Busy Woman's Guide to Self-Care, Do Less, Achieve More, and Live the Life You Want by Susan Falter, just popped out at me. Sounded good. Sat in my house for about a year. And about a year ago, I really took heart to the ingredients in this book. I'd like to just begin by sharing just a couple short paragraphs that will help set this off. And in chapter 1, it says, why we all crave self-care. You may think you're one of the few people out there who doesn't actually need self-care. You may tell yourself you're just too busy for self-care. Or you offer up your annual massage and your occasional weekend paid as proof that you're just fine. Secretly, part of you may believe you're just a little superhuman and don't need the same stuff the rest of us do. And yet, here you are reading this book. You may insist that you'd get to self-care if only there weren't so many other people and projects out there demanding your attention. Or maybe you're just a procrastinator. You really are going to start taking better care of yourself, ... soon. Or it could be a major piece of your life has just fallen apart. You've been left mildly stunned, knowing something must change and feeling utterly overwhelmed at the prospect. Maybe you just flat out know you need self-care and you need help with it now. What a good way to begin. Yes, we all need self-care. It sounds simple and easy, and yet it takes a discipline and a habit and a concerted effort to get it done. I want to ask a question. I would love everyone to go into the chat. Think for a minute. This is audience participation. Within the past week, the past 7 days, think of one thing that you've done for yourself. One thing that you've done for yourself, and put just a brief description in the chat, if you would. Gone to therapy. I took a walk and took a nap. Thank you. Went to the movies. Bought myself a present. Massage and watercoloring. Wow. There's so many different things that we all do, and we have different needs at different times in our life. Exercise, rock climbing, and running. I love it. Went phone free for a day. That is dynamite. You don't know the value of putting the electronics aside and just really listening to yourself, to nature, just to quiet. What a concept. I'm going to talk about, and thank you guys for indulging me. Someone said, laid on the couch and read a book. Oh my gosh, that's a good one. Saw my osteopath for a body tune-up. Yoga. You guys are amazing. So you're kind of already on the patch. Went to a sauna. Yes, I love that. So we're going to talk about the 5 basics of self-care. Understand your needs. Set boundaries. Ask for help as needed. Take action and build self-care into your day. And then we'll just have a final takeaway. And I want to say that you can do this. Just begin small and build and develop your habit. Okay, next. Dr. Poise and I must be on the same wavelength. He talked about Audre Lorde, and here it is, the quote: "Caring for myself is not self-indulgent, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." I'm going to say that again. Caring for myself is not self-indulgent. It is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. We must fight for time for ourselves. Why not take better care of yourself than we do others? We're really good, caring and compassionate individuals, and we know what's going on in the world, but that can be utterly draining at times. You will do a better job at doing that if you're able to have replenished yourself. Most of you have been on an airplane. What's the drill? In case of an emergency, the oxygen mask will fall down, and you are to take the oxygen first before the person that you might be caring for sitting next to you. You have to have the strength. You have to have the will, the desire, the energy to be able to care for a loved one. And no one can do that for you but you. You know that. No one can get those steps. Most of you have these fancy watches, and you get your 10,000 steps in a day, but no one can do that for you but you. You have to do the walk. You've got to put in the miles. And it's okay to breathe and then exhale. Nourishment to this mind, body, spirit really does take relaxation, dedication, hydration, all those good things. And I know it can be exhausting, but we deserve it. We deserve to take care of ourselves. And I've kind of already asked you this, but think of it again. How do you nourish your mind and spirit on a daily basis? Well, I put these pictures here because I have a dog named Penny, who I adore. And one of the reasons that Penny is so great in my life is because she allows, well, I've got to get her out. I've got to walk her. But guess what? That's really helped for me. So we're both kind of doing self-care to one another by going out and taking a daily walk. I also do water fitness. I love the water. That's a great way. That's something I only get to do once a week right now during the school year, but it's something I look forward to. So daily, I can go out and take the walks, but weekly, I can get to my water fitness class on Saturdays and really get a dynamite workout. What do you do? The 5 basics to self-care. 1, understand your needs. You've got to assess, what is it my body's calling out for? What is being depleted? What am I not able to replenish in the normal routines that I now have? So you must do that assessment and understand what you need. Sometimes we don't know what we need, but having a process, this book is a beautiful, lots of journaling entries in this book that really help you to process that information and help you inventory what it is you need. Number 2, setting boundaries. I can't do everything. I try to, but I'm learning that I really need to stop. Sometimes it's okay to say no. I can't do everything and do it well. And I understand that about myself. And so I have some boundaries for myself. I'm sure each of you knows your limit, and it's really exciting, and maybe it feels good to always accept and do things when you're really not able to. But that's also a part of taking care of yourself, knowing what your boundary is so that you can keep balanced. I'm not saying just all do something that benefits you, because we know that that's not good. I'm not saying to do something that just all benefits other people, leaving you totally depleted. That's not good. We need to find that happy medium. And number 3, ask for help as needed. This journey a lot of times can't be done alone. We need someone. We need a buddy. We need somebody that can give us that inspiration. We need a village. We need a community. And maybe we need a partner to help us, help us to motivate ourselves. Number 4, take action. You've got to do something. You know you need to do it, but you've got to make that first step and taking action, and small steps. You don't go from not running a 5-mile race to running, excuse me, I said it wrong. You don't go from not running to running a 5-mile race. You've got to take steps, and maybe you start with just a block or 2 and you build up, but you've got to do something that will set you on the course for you having the peace of mind. I think self-care gives you peace of mind. Self-care also helps you to be more vital, and it also helps in your health, mental and physical well-being. And number 5, you've got to build self-care into your day. Being a freedom fighter, always worrying about the cause of others, is mentally draining. Taking care of family members, just the demands of being a parent or a teacher or our jobs really take a lot out of us. And so, as dedicated as we are to some of those things, we need to be just as dedicated to ourselves and build self-care, some sort of routine into our daily life. I love Susan Falter's quote here. It says, "Not only then did I realize that this seemingly self-indulgent activity was actually the truest path back to happiness." And I don't want to give it up, but she lost a daughter, and she had some other things going on in her life. And sometimes it's just the simplest things. It's replenishing ourselves, replenishing our mind, body, and spirit that really will bring us the happiness. And I'm not talking about wealth. I'm not talking about spending lots of money. Really, it's simple things that really help bring us to deeper happiness. Okay, some self-care essentials. A good night's rest. That's part of self-care. I know many of you have heard a lot about getting proper rest. Good rest is good for your longevity. It's good for you being purposeful and active the next day. And I know some people have problems having good night's rest, but trying to get the rest in. I know for myself personally, I'm a napper. I can't do that during the work week, but on the weekend, there's nothing wrong for me to just take a nap. An hour, what I call a power nap, is very useful. Peaceful love. Peaceful love, she talks about as just being something that is healing, loving yourself, maybe loving some another, but that if it's peaceful, not love that's hurtful, love that's always confusion, love that's always, oh my gosh, it just takes you away from it being a healing type of love. That's very essential to us leading a strong and healthy life. Friends and family that you can count on. I've got tons of friends and family, and I hope you all do as well. We all need our tribes. We all need our villages and our communities. As Dr. Posey said, who can I rely on? Who can help me to fill my cup? It's really, really important, and that's an essential part of self-care. Having a good night's rest, the peaceful love, people that are around you that are encouraging and will help give you some great energy. Great energy also is something that is important and essential in that for myself, I feel that I have great energy because I encourage others. I take my vitamins, I get good rest, I get exercise, and I think that does help to give me really good, strong energy that can be infectious. And I like to be around people that energize me. So, are you able to energize others? That is a self-care essential. And another is just to have fun. What you do should be fun and healing, because if it's fun, it's something you will continue to do. And you tend to get less bored of doing it because you're having fun. I thought this was profound in the book. She says that missed vacations impact your health. Studies have found that not only do missed vacations impact your health and personal relationships, but you also become less productive as you continue to slog away without a break. Wow, that's deep. Vacations tend to cost money, so we tend to have to plan for them. But there are also vacations that can just be quick weekend, but they really help to pep your step. They also, I think, allow you to see the world, different situations, different people, and give a whole new perspective to you and your life. And it's apparently just, you're more productive. You're out of the mundane and the routine. And so vacations are something that are fruitful and part of an essential self-care routine. I saw that some people put that they read in the chat, and I love that. The daily word keeps me on track. That's reading, work out and listen to inspiring podcasts. Just think of all the different types of reading and books there are. And the benefit of reading, it supports our mental well-being, which is self-care. Reading calms your soul and spirit. You tune out the world when you're reading. It reduces stress. It strengthens your cognition, so your brain functioning. You have improved sleep, and you develop empathy through the different things that you read. And as you learn more about others and situations, you are able to build that up. And so reading this book for me, The Extremely Busy Women's Guide to Self-Care, has been a new revelation in my life. And I encourage you to check it out, or some other similar type of book available to you, or listen to a podcast. Listening to a podcast is great, but I think the tactile energy as a teacher, I notice more and more students not being able to read books. They don't have that affinity, that love. And so I'm bringing newspapers and and magazines and other things in there just to get them that connection that you get from reading a book. And then I'm learning about all these other things that I know have worked well for me, especially in the reducing of the stress and just how it calms my soul and spirit. Habits, similar words, practice, custom, pattern, and routines. Susan Falter says you can have all the good intentions in the world, but habits are what actually change your behavior long term. So making self-care a habit, a custom, a practice, a routine for you is going to be very beneficial. Just think of the simple pleasures of life. These are some things that I'm jammed about. I love tea and I love the relaxation of that. I love walking through a field of flowers. I love going into the woods with my dog and walking on the trails. And I love cooking in the kitchen. These are all things that are very therapeutic, pretty much free, and they are simple pleasures. Suzanne says in the book, I learned that self-care is ultimately about the exquisite act of simply being, without needing to be useful, effective, organized, ambitious, or even good. True self-care is about honoring your heart and soul. And I have, let's see, maybe a few minutes. I want to play a game. This is something that I do with students in my classroom. These are just some websites and apps on self-care. WordWall, there's a website called Calm. That's kind of a meditation and sleep relaxation. Of course, there's books and other resources, but I'm going to indulge you quickly. Let's go back. So what I have found with my students is, obviously it's all academic, but if I can put things in a form that is fun for them. What? Oh, hold on just a sec. What did I do? Oh. Thank you. Okay. So what I'm going to do is just show you how WordWall as a resource, if any of you are educators, and you don't even have to be an educator to maybe use this as a tool to spur thinking, people's thinking. This one happens to be a WordWall on self-care. So we're just going to spin it. Psychological, just how we think. Me thinking about the need that I need to do something more for myself. And you eliminate, and you spin again, and something else will come up. I love this. Spiritual and inner peace. We all have those different resources that we go to for our spiritual and inner peace. It's a vital part of self-care that we've got to learn how to just spend more quiet time amongst ourselves, to learn about ourselves, to figure out what our true needs are. Okay, do a couple more. I love this. Self-control. Oh my gosh, I talk to students all the time about that. But adults and kids have the same issues. And having self-control over your situations is how you approach it. So it's very important to have inner peace, to learn how to deal with different situations that might come up. So there's a note in or a big sign in my classroom that says, we change emotions with an emotion. So think about that. You change an emotion with an emotion. And I'll do one more. I just thought this was a fun way to kind of end a talk on self-care. What else is coming up? Eating habits. Oh my gosh. That has to do with self-care. What are you consuming? Are you drinking lots of water? Are you eating foods that are healthy and helpful for your mind, body, and spirit? I love the name of that grocery store, Whole Foods. Are you eating whole and nutritious foods that are going to help sustain and allow your mind and your body and your spirit to just be sharper, for lack of a better word? All right, I am going to stop sharing and let me know how I've done, everybody. Do you have any questions?
Well, Brenda, you've done wonderfully. Yeah, thank you so much. The organizing team has a little group chat, and Ivory said, Ivory, I hope you don't mind me sharing. Ivory said in the group chat, this feels like a virtual hug. Yeah, that was really lovely.
I mean, after all of the talk that you've had and all that's going on in the world and the news, we're so bombarded. We've got to remember to take care of us so that we can go back out and take care of the world and our families.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually don't think there's a better word to end on. So we're going to let those be the words that we conclude with. Thank you so much, Brenda, and thank you to our other speakers, Jody, Alicia, Jennifer, Jordan, and again, Brenda, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Our 2025 Educators for Democracy teach-ins are concluding, but we're going to relaunch again in 2026. So be on the lookout for the next round of educator teach-ins. And we do want to share with folks briefly, just before we go, we do have a couple of other events coming up. We shared this with you a little bit earlier, but just get it back in front of you before we head out. We're constantly active at the Institute, trying to think of ways that we can, pull from where we are to make some sort of change, especially as we're moving into what will be a tumultuous 2026. And we'll remember as we move through it, Miss Brenda, to take care of ourselves all along the way. Thanks for being with us tonight, everybody. It's a real pleasure, and we hope to see you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. That was great.
Thank you. Thank you.